All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for putting up with our technical difficulties. We'll begin by saluting the flag, so please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, CAO Hayes, are there any modifications to the agenda? Sorry.
Yes, Chair Bass. Item D14 will be pulled for discussion, and the time set for 9:30 is going to be pushed till 10 a.m., and then we'll go into closed session immediately following that item.
All right, thank you very much. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item D14?
So moved.
Second.
All right. For those of you who are listening or watching on TV, or video, if you want to make a comment on any of these items on the consent calendar, you should press *9 to raise your hand. There's a time delay, so turn the turn the volume off on your video feed so you don't lose the opportunity because it is a significant time delay. So you should be listening on the phone if you have called in. We'll go to those. Anyone else signed with their hands up yet, ma'am? Hold on just a moment. Let me get into my system. 7545? All right, well, 7545, press *6 to unmute, and you have 3 minutes. All right, 7545. Do we show? Do we have it now? All right. We'll try this again. 7545. If you're there you are unmuted. Welcome.
Finally, thank you. The meeting started late. It took a minute to get me unmuted here. I do wish to make a comment on number 6. I believe you've appointed somebody as far as HR director. I'm just curious, was that decision reported out of closed session, or how did that work? Maybe don't understand that one. I think we dealt with it during closed session last meeting. And then we have something very interesting here. Item number 9. We have an RFP for the Child Protection Reporting Guide. And according to the staff report, unless I misunderstood it, this RFP process was started August 9th, but yet it's coming before you folks on the 23rd. And the proposals are due on September 9th, so there's only legally a few days instead of 30 days. I question this process. You may wish to go ahead and pull this one and add extra time to this particular process. This should have happened 3 years ago. This should have been the first thing that was done in compliance with the state attorney general's thing, was basically come up with a method of reporting the abuse of children and things. So I highly recommend you pull this and you extend the deadline on that one. See, there also was there's something on the Veterans Hall here, $251,845 to demolish it, item 13. But there's nothing on there to replace it. My understanding is it's going to be 30% smaller, possibly. Michelle Bushnell ran on this one, or I promised people this would happen down there, and still we're in the point of tearing the building down, but no pathway that I've seen would appreciate communication from the powers that be as far as the pathway, as far as when and what this project will be replaced with down there for the veterans down in Garberville. They're stuck in some little room. I don't think they even meet there. And it's kind of a tragedy that the county has not followed through with its obligation and contractual obligation to provide this to them, and sooner the better down there. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on that, and I look forward to speaking on item number 14 when that one comes before us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I see we do have a second hand up, 7108. Press *6 to unmute.
Good morning. This is Bonnie Blackberry, and I'm commenting on item 13, the bid authorization for the Garberville Veterans Hall demolition. From what I understand is this was budgeted a year ago for this to happen. So I don't know why it's taken, well, who knows if it will actually happen in October of starting to demolish it. And then there's the question, has there been money budgeted for the rebuild? Because if it takes, a year after you authorize the money to tear the building down, this has just been going on for a really long time, and I hope the vets can live long enough to be able to enjoy this building. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. And so I don't see any more hands on the phone. We're not there yet. We have no more hands on the phone. Before we go to the members of the public, just a reminder, it's a strict 3-minute limit. When, as the last speaker did, they mentioned the item they were speaking to that's on the consent calendar. So we ask those who speak here on the consent calendar to tell us what item they're speaking on, and to stick with that topic or what items. And so, yeah, welcome, come forward.
Steve Davis with comments on number 13 first. Is it possible to change the word demolition to carefully taking apart? I have not seen the Garberville Veterans Hall. However, for a son of a veteran and to honor all veterans and their service, that is a possible consideration. I'd also like to address consent item number 8, that the number one most important efforts moving forward to our great county here of Humboldt and our great state of California to participate in mental health services and the simplicities of delivering the basic needs to the street, as I mentioned to Sophia last time, and the complexities of having someone conserved and working through avoiding the court system and making sure our deputy sheriffs and police officers and peacemaking people are given the best of education and opportunities to interact with everyone possible as guests come over our borders and people, whether it's biking by car, flying in, public transportation, we have a great responsibility and opportunity to work together and do our best. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Yes, get to the point. All right, so there appears no one else in our public that's with us. Oh, yes, sir, come forward.
Hi there, board members. I'm going to comment on item D6. I'm Zach Ohannon. Thank you to your board for appointing me as the Human Resources Director. I just wanted to put a face to the name for the public. You all know me already, though. And thank you for putting faith in me. And I just want to thank also the HR staff. They make my job pretty darn easy. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and thank you.
Hey, we haven't voted yet, Zach.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually thought he was going to come up and say he's not interested in it anymore.
After you vote, thank you.
All right, I see no one else coming forward. That was good. We'll go back to the board and Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you, through the chair. I wanted to comment on a couple of the items. The first item I wanted to comment on was the aviation. I had checked in with Cody Ruggets to, I really want to promote local, buying local. He assured me that he had spoke with, who's the on there? The Motorsports Place, and that this is the route we had to go. So that really made me feel a lot better. The second thing I want to comment on is the Veterans Hall in Garberville. Anybody is welcome to call me and I can walk you through the steps. This first step is the approval of the demolition of the Veterans Hall. And the second step would be the reconstruction, which will happen in the spring. Thank you to Sean Meehan. He's the facilities organization person for this. He has met probably 6 times with the veterans in Garberville. And they have been talking about the plans and kind of tweaking it to what they think they need. A question was asked about whether it's being downsized. It's not being downsized. The courts won't be there. The space that the veterans will have is going to be a little bit larger than what they had previously. They're very excited about the new design and what's coming. They also are very excited about the process that they've been involved in. So this is the first step. The monies are already allocated. It's a process. It takes time. They've waited way too long. We all agree on that, but it is moving forward. So I just really want to thank Public Works and the veterans in Garberville for sticking with this process, and hopefully we'll have construction going in the spring.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair Bass. I also spoke with Cody with relationship to the aviation purchase of the 2 vehicles. I expressed my desire that we really seek in electric vehicles for, especially in these on-site spaces, and especially since we have probably one of the largest microgrid systems in the state of California on-site, so it would seem compatible. He is trying to do his job to look for those things, and within this framework that he was looking for, the equipment is not available yet. And I will say that this is moving in the right direction. These vehicles are, even though they're fossil fuel based, they use far less fuel than full-size pickups that were, that is generally the alternate that you see in these spaces. So we'll still be working hard to electrify, and I just wanted to put it out there that Cody is working in that direction. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Madrone?
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank staff and Supervisor Bushnell for the work on the Vets Hall, working with the vets. It's my understanding that they're also going to be able to salvage significant pieces that are in good shape, like some flooring and some other very important things to them. So I just want to congratulate you and staff for working together with that community to make sure that all the good salvage can be done while also moving forward with the project. It's really exciting to get to this day. I think we've all been waiting for this for a long time. I know they have, the vets in Southern Humboldt, for a long time. So kudos to everybody involved in that. Another set of kudos to Zach and for his work with his staff in HR. They've been through a lot. It's a really critical department in our county that helps every other department in all kinds of ways. And I want to thank you, Zach, for your leadership. I know you've been a big component of helping to rebuild morale and other things, and we expect big things from you after we vote here in a few minutes. So thank you very much.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, do we have the vote tab up, or are we going to do roll call? It is not coming up on mine yet. Hold on. I'm on the right agenda. 23. Do you have yours? Why is mine not up?
Nothing here.
Okay, so you don't have it on yours either?
Nope.
Okay.
This may be a big surprise, but I have it on.
Whoa. Usually it's you that doesn't have it. So,
If you'd like to do roll call vote while she.
we would, as long as she'll check. I mean, I would like us to, so we don't get too delayed.
Sure. Supervisor Bushnell,
Yes.
Supervisor Bone,
Hey, Brooke to the rescue.
Yeah.
Supervisor Madrone,
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson,
Yes.
and Supervisor Bass.
Yes. Oh, I have to,
Passes 5-0.
makes me sign back in. Okay, I got booted out. Thank you, thank you, Tracy. All right, so we'll move on to the item that was pulled, which is D14. Comes to us from the Sheriff's Department. And I do believe we have a representative here. Come on up, and you can tell us about the fiscal year 21-22 equitable sharing agreements and certifications. It's one of those Tuesdays. Welcome. Can you?
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Regina Fuller. I'm the Deputy Director of Financial and Support Services for the Sheriff's Department, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have on the federal equitable sharing agreement that we submit every year.
All right, and I believe Supervisor Madrone pulled it, so we'll turn this over to you.
Good to see you, Regina.
Thank you.
I just want to say you've done amazing work there in the department and helping bring all the fiscal stuff up to a new level. So thank you for your hard work with that.
Thank you.
I was just curious, last week we had some items on the agenda using some of the asset forfeiture funds, 100,000. I'm seeing here 500 and 400. Is that the difference between state accounts versus federal
Correct.
asset? Okay.
Yeah, the federal, it's few and far between. I've only been with the department for 4 years. And my recollection is we've only received 1 or 2 small. So I don't know the history as to why that has kind of quote unquote dried up in comparison, but so it's anything that involves the Department of Treasury or Department of Justice is the federal dollars.
Okay.
And then what you're more familiar with and where we have actual funds is everything that doesn't involve them, and that's the state account. So they're separate trust accounts. And the federal has a portal that once a year we go in and we have to file this report in order to remain eligible. And so that's what's in front of you. Usually there's some interest, but you know that we haven't had interest posted for over a year. So I imagine that's why I have in there 2 years running now for you to give me the authority to amend that report once interest is posted for those fiscal years.
Oh, great.
So-
Yeah, that's what I was assuming. There was these different accounts.
Yeah.
And there's no requirement for annual reporting with the state accounts?
No, there is a report that the district attorney's office does, but it's very different, and I don't have any involvement in that one.
How difficult would it be to produce an annual report on the state asset forfeiture?
Easy. I give it to the sheriff on a quarterly basis, so he knows what our balances are, and it's all in finance enterprise, so it's completely transparent in there for
Great.
the auditor's office, the CAO's office.
Great. Well, I would like to get an annual report, but of course, I'm only one on the board, so that direction would have to come from the board as a whole. I don't know if the rest of the board members would like to see that or not. Just learning more about it's been of value to me. So I leave that
Certainly.
to the rest of the board if they would like to choose to do that.
Thank you, Supervisor. I have a question for our CAO. That is also something, a board member can put something on the agenda themselves as well, correct? I mean, it may be to sponsor that, so that could be another way versus just official action. Either way.
I have a question.
Hold on a second. Supervisor Wilson, did you have your hand up? Nope. Okay. Yeah, Supervisor Bushnell then Bone.
Well, I'm just wondering, that report, could you email the sheriff and it could be sent to us? And
I think it's of value to the public as a whole.
Sure,
And I don't think it's appropriate to do something right now because it's not really agendized for that.
Right.
So I'll consider bringing something back.
Okay.
Great.
Well, okay, maybe I'll email them and ask for it, just so we have it'd be helpful to have the information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Supervisor Bone.
Hey, Regina.
Good morning.
Didn't you say the DA filed this state report?
I believe that they have some sort of a state report that they have to file, but I don't know if it comes before your board or how that works.
Maybe that's what I'd do, is I'd ask the DA if they're already filing a report, unless we want to do a duplication of process, because I think, so that would probably
And I don't know
satisfy
that
all
it's
your
super
needs and
financial.
stuff.
I think it's more, I really should not speak to it because I don't know much about it. It ran across my desk once, only for me to realize it wasn't mine to do, and so I made sure it went to the DA's office. But I don't know that it's similar to this one. I'm not sure it's very financial related, but.
All right. Any other supervisors have questions? Supervisor Wilson.
I was just wondering, at the end of the report, it says something about, in order to be eligible for grants, you're filing this stuff. Do you have any idea what the order of magnitude of those grants that we become eligible for in order, because we're doing this?
I don't think that we have to do this to be eligible for grants. I may have missed that. Is that? I
Maybe
know-
the CAO can
Where
That was with
at?
the state funds last time. There was a leveraging of a federal grant with our state monies, I believe, asset forfeitures. That came up last week on
Oh,
the
yeah, that
agenda.
doesn't, I don't think that has anything to do with
No,
this report.
I agree.
Okay, let me just, I'll just bring it up so I can just, it just says in the, sorry, I just didn't have it up right now, but I will. Hold on.
Are you looking for the report?
Oh, yeah, it just basically says, so like in the alternatives for us, like we could say no, right, to this. And then it basically says that if you say, however, this is not recommended, as the sheriffs and DTF would no longer qualify for participation in a share of DOJ and DOT forfeiture funds. So I'm saying if we don't do this, we wouldn't qualify for this. And I was just wondering what the kind of order of magnitude of those funds that we would no longer be eligible
So they are
for.
the asset forfeiture funds, they're not grant funds, just to be clear. So they're
Okay,
these
I
funds that I'm
apologize.
reporting on.
Yeah.
So there are some outstanding ones that haven't had sharing decisions on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the magnitude of those. My recollection is there's at least 6 or 7 that are old, because
Mm-hmm.
it can take years before they're finally settled upon. We did just get one payout that was years old that just got paid out, and you'll see that in next year's report, since it happened in this fiscal year. It was $2,200.
Okay.
So the federal side of it is so far, but it could just be one case that could potentially be $1 million. You just never know.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. That's all, was my only question.
Yep, nope.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
All right, Supervisor Bushnell?
Well, I know we haven't done public comment, but I'll just make a motion that we adopt staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Before we go to public comment, if you are listening, press *9 to raise your hand. If you're in, whether you're commenting on the phone or in person, keep it specific to this item, which is item 14 regarding the fiscal year equitable sharing agreements. So with that, we will go to those on the phone first, I think. 7454. I see no other hands at this point, so if you're planning to speak, press *9. So 7454, press *6 to unmute.
Virginia, did I get it first time this time?
Yep, you're good to go.
Good answer. So I'm looking at this thing, and it says $446 and $503. In my opinion, as just mentioned, there could be $1 million things involved coming in this. And my question is, why hasn't there been? Public perception is Humboldt County is the most porous port and the most porous airports probably in the world, other than maybe Sinaloa down in Mexico or something. Public perception is that tens of millions of dollars flow out to our local airports in what you call cannabis going out, and the proceeds of those sales coming back in, everything from the cash to the fentanyl. There is no longer a homeland security on our port. And I remember one of the first busts was, I think, a ship, some guy named Forbes or something was out there, but we haven't seen any of those. This illegal black market material is going somewhere. My other thing on forfeitures, I want to know what percentage we get. In other words, if there's something we're involved in, let's just say that there was a 10,000-acre ranch in Humboldt County, and it was found that I refer to them, the boys in the barns, were growing pot there. Cannabis there, and then that was went across state lines and was sold out there. Would obviously that 10,000-acre ranch would be in jeopardy, possibly as far as forfeiture, because of the illegal activity, criminal activity, especially regarding the feds is involved. So this is very disconcerting. I've raised complaints to law enforcement repeatedly regarding the use of our airports to transport things out of here. It doesn't all go out in boats, going back to Tennessee to go fishing in the sidewalls of boats. But it is going through our port and through our airports. And then I also raised contention that, there have been no busts as far as what I refer to as the boys in the barns. And public perception is that there's been a very large amount of indoor grows happening there. And this has been discussed repeatedly with law enforcement. And yes, I've not seen anything happening in either of those two things. So I'm a little bit, I think we could pay for our whole sheriff's department if we were actually going down these pathways and using this money as far as generating funds for the county And it's very disconcerting to me that law enforcement has shown no interest at all in pursuing these things which could end up in equitable sharing to the tunes of tens of millions of dollars. So that's my input on this. And I couldn't talk to Sheriff Billy earlier regarding my concerns. He called at the last minute here. Happy to talk to the sheriff later after the meeting and get some input as far as am I going down the wrong rabbit hole or not? I do not believe so. And there's public perception very large out there that this has been ongoing for a long time. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. There are no other hands on the phone, so we'll go to those in the public. And again, this item is regarding the sharing agreement for the asset forfeiture. I don't see anyone approaching the podium. Okay, don't worry, please come forward if you plan to speak on this. Yes, okay. And just a reminder for anyone who may be wanting to speak when they come in person, it's really easy for me if you go stand by the side of the door so I know that you want to speak. So for future, for anybody that might be listening, that helps out a lot. All right, so, welcome.
Thank you. Steve Davis speaking to item number 14, fiscal year 2021 to 22, equitable sharing agreements and certifications for our sheriff department. Yes, we, the public, would like to know the dollar amounts that our best efforts moving forward on the very best of welfare checks when called at our residence on Azalea Hill. We've received very timely results for various people of our deputy sheriffs and sheriff's assistants, and we've had quite the variety of accurate reporting and congenial interactions. It is my hope and others that welfare checks be made consistent and thorough and with that extra Humboldt County niceness. And so thank you for all of you who are in grant writing and reporting to the federal level and to our state of California level. We may be known as a poor county, but we are very rich in the history of people working together, coming together day by day and place by place for service and good company.
All right,
and that
thank
is
you.
priceless.
All right,
So
cool.
I thank you so much for your best efforts in doing the best we can from sea to shining sea for the feds and
okay.
for our great state, as there isn't anywhere else I'd like to live and work than my Humboldt County. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Steve. So when we come back, now that we are back, I did want to because I think there's confusion in the public sometimes that the asset forfeiture can be used to augment services and stuff, but it's really specific. Correct, Regina? So that's why normally I would have stopped the speaker and saying, well, this is a different type of money, but I don't know if that's clear to a lot of people. So thank you for confirming that. And there are no other folks in the audience who appear interested to talk on this one. And so we can come back to the board and either vote or any other comments. All right. I think we have, and I have my vote tab up. Me too. Ooh, and Mike does too. Yay. All right, passes. It's behind my head, but I'm guessing 5-0. There we go.
Thank you, Regina, for coming up.
Yes, thank you. So next item is initiated by Supervisor Bone and is regarding considering sending a letter of opposition to AB 1608 related to consolidation of offices of sheriff, coroner, and public administrator. So Supervisor Bone.
48 of 58 counties have a combined sheriff, coroner, and there have been some instances, as there has been in everything, of some crossover issues, but those I think are now addressed through a lot of different variations. What we find out, RCRC and CSAC have both come out in opposition to this, mainly because of the expense it will cause small counties creating different departments, or we could put it under the public guardian. They don't want it under the tax collector, I noticed, but I don't know. We just did this in 2014. We combined them. I believe, and I think Regina might even have those numbers, I'm not sure of the cost savings or if there, if there is a combined savings, but it has been beneficial to us. We have not had any issues. I do want to mention that the white Corvette comes up every once in a while, and the white Corvette, after it was brought back, was actually sent to John's Fine Cars and crushed because they couldn't sell it. So it was not quite the car everybody thought it was. But I think the DOJ investigation didn't come up with anything. We've had a great working relationship. I haven't had any complaints on the coroner's office in 4 or 5 years, and I think that's the main thing we look for if we don't hear anything. So I don't know why we would change everything. 48 counties are already doing it this way. So I know RCRC, it looks like it's going to pass. A lot of the people are going to vote for it, even though they don't want to, I'm hearing. But I would like to see it. One of the things we're trying to do is try to get smaller counties under 150 or under 200,000 to be exempt, so we don't have to have these expenses. Because I can remember in 2000, we tried to appoint a coroner, and we had a lot of people, we couldn't get a qualified individual. So it's not that easy. It would be expensive to set up a separate entity. That's the savings we were looking for 8 years ago. So that's the only reason I brought it up, is because our state groups that we that are tracking this and everything else are basically, it's not beneficial to the smaller counties, which we happen to be one of.
And thank you, Supervisor Bone, and I'll chime in from the standpoint, I was there as well and went through that process. And we did have, the coroner was retiring, which gave us the opportunity to actually look at it fairly thoroughly and make that decision. And while, there had been challenges, as you said, I think that has been addressed, and I think it's operating really well. I don't get, nobody wants to interact with the coroner's office, ever, right? And what I hear is they're very responsive and caring people, and I just feel, I'm comfortable with the way we have our situation, and I'm glad you brought this to us. And then Supervisor Bushnell had something too, but if you wanted to go after Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you, through the chair. Well, Sam, are you here for this? Do you have anything you would like to add? Or are you just here to answer questions? I'm here to answer. Okay. So I was curious, under this model, if this passes, whether the coroner would be, and I asked Sheriff Hansel this morning, he wasn't sure, whether it would be an elected or an appointed person that we would, do you guys know? Appointed. It's appointed, not elected?
And we could actually put it underneath the public guardians. There's other departments you could put it underneath. That what they're looking for is a separation from the sheriffs. I think this is being sponsored by the ACLU because of some issues they've had in other counties, much larger counties, who might be able to afford the separation. Smaller counties, it's just we're setting up another department. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a cost factor and things, and that's I think RCRC is big. Our meeting last week was the idea if we could get some concessions so the smaller counties weren't involved in it. We're very fortunate. Our coroner's office, I get phone calls from people about how passionate they are and how they helped them through the process. And we've had a lot of serious cases, and these people have handled it with, it's beyond what, when somebody calls to thank you for the coroner, the job they did, and that's, when I said I haven't got any phone calls, that's the only calls I've had, is the passion and the compassion that they've showed. So I don't know why we would change something, or why they would think of, it's just more bureaucracy, I think, instead of creating less bureaucracy.
So along those lines, I had to deal with the coroner twice this year for family members, and they were amazing. However, there's 2 items on our a consent that we just passed that we're planning and building dealt with because we don't have a public administrator over at the corners, and the owners were deceased of a home, and that would normally go through the sheriff corner. And I spoke with Sheriff Hansel this morning, and they are moving forward to getting that person in there so that these types of things can go through the proper process. It needs to go through the sheriff coroner's office. So I think, I had a pretty long discussion with the sheriff this morning, and while you don't hear any complaints, and I don't think there are any, you do have to ask the questions once in a while and just not assume because you're not hearing things. The coroner's office was amazing with my family this year, but I do think that if we could get, and the sheriff assures me that we're going to get those other positions filled in there, so that would be helpful.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Supervisor Wilson?
I have a differing view on this one, I suppose. I don't support the opposition letter necessarily. I wouldn't actually even support a support letter in this. There's a couple reasons. One is I do see the value in the arc of transitioning these services away from sheriff's departments in general. I do share anxiety about the potential cost of that, but I do see that it is open to moving into other departments, such as public health. And I think that if the state moves in that direction, that those mechanisms will be dealt with. And yeah, so for me, it's not something I don't support this letter, but I do appreciate the work that the coroner's office has done, and I don't think that those services would be different under a different department in terms of the compassion that is shown. I think the issue is the potential for conflict of interest that people are trying to address, and I don't. Yeah, it seems like a medical issue more than a law enforcement issue to me, and it seems like just because a long time ago these two things were connected doesn't necessarily mean that we have to move forward with that. But nonetheless, I also don't really know how it's going to end up if it gets to the governor's office, in what form it's going to be, and so that's another reason I'm not that comfortable with it. But I will not vote for the opposition letter. But that's it. That's me. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Madrone, and then Bushnell.
Thank you, Chair. This is an interesting issue. I certainly understand the desire to try and save money. I mean, we don't have money growing on trees around here, so, that's certainly a major issue. There were problems in the past. I don't think there have been those kinds of problems over the last number of years, and I'm pleased to see that. But when those problems happen, I mean, it seems like Supervisor Bone has information about the disposition of the white Corvette and other things. And, I remember that situation as being one where the community was very concerned about the disposition of a number of assets that occurred through that process, the white Corvette and many other things. And then the sheriff said there was going to be an investigation, and then there wasn't any allowance for bringing that information forward to the public because of the confidentiality clauses and all kinds of other things. And yet, one of us up here seems to know what happened to some of these things, which is interesting on another level. So from a transparency perspective, I think that it would really be good to have these separated, because when an investigation happens and you can't actually tell the public what was the outcome of that investigation, it leaves people not knowing and wondering, what happened there. So for that reason, I really think that they ought to be separated because of transparency. And I'm glad to realize that there might be ways to house some of this in other departments so that the cost isn't so great. So I don't support the letter as it's written.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Bushnell?
Well, Supervisor Wilson, I'm wondering about your comment about it's more of a doctor position. When the coroner does an autopsy, oftentimes that autopsy is done to determine cause of death, whether it could be an investigation into, say, a murder or a killing. And would you, so then, I guess, Sam, can I have you come up, please? I'm wondering at that time, if it was going through public health or a different department, I guess there would be involvement with the sheriff at that time. Sam, can you answer that? Currently, how much do you interact, the sheriff's department interact with the coroner's office and with autopsies?
Daily. The doctors, I think there's, with respect to the relationship, the doctors that perform the autopsies are contracted employees. They're physicians that have other practices, other jobs. They're not employees of the county. When considering a little deeper look at the intent behind the bill, I think that our doctors are as disconnected as they can be from the autopsies that they're conducting in order to provide an unbiased and transparent cause of death, and that is the purpose of the autopsies that they perform. They're given a briefing at the beginning of the case in which 95% of the time they don't know anything about, and this takes about 15 minutes, and they perform their autopsy and give their conclusions.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have a question for him? Oh, Supervisor Bowen?
I don't know anything that nobody else could found out. I asked the coroner, since that white Corvette was parked in the middle of the parking lot at planning a building for a few years or 18 months. I says, what happened to it? And they said nobody wanted to buy it, so we had it crushed. It wasn't, I didn't have anything nefarious to do with it. This was actually turned over to the FBI when it first broke, and Sheriff also turned it over to the FBI. They did not want to take the case, so it went to the California Attorney General. The California Attorney General, 18 months later, came back and said, we are not going to file any charges on any of these cases. So there was public perception, yes, that, oh my God, they sold a Corvette. But in all honesty, the white Corvette, when I looked at it, had 6 inches of water in it because it was a T-top, and the manifolds and the exhaust was in the front seat, and it had quite a few body cracks on it. So in turn, it was not the Corvette of our dreams. But with that being said, I'm just saying, and you're right, the transparency is so much more important than money. I fully agree. I don't know where this is going to give us any more transparency for a county of 150,000 people, because we have not had any of these issues. So all I'm saying is, you're right. We're writing a letter in opposition to the way it is written now, because I don't think, I've kind of said, nobody likes the way it's written right now. That's what we're saying. I guarantee you it's going to be changed probably 6 times to heaven before it gets to the governor's desk. I'm just trying to see if we can get out of it. Maybe we can get a population, kind of like the food waste and everything else. I keep saying, we're getting things, that are being pushed by larger counties or larger counties supporting that we can't. We've got 2.7 million acres that we have to deal with, and doing a lot of these things that the state's doing is becoming cost prohibitive. So this letter was brought forward in support of the agencies that we are involved with, and as the way it sits now. I don't think it says anything about we oppose anything that's coming out of this, because it's going to pass in one format or another. The way it is written is not advantageous, does not increase transparency for us, and the biggest thing it does is it does cost us money. I don't think it infringes on transparency. I don't think there's any transparency issues with the coroner's office as it is now. So that's why the letter of opposition.
Supervisor Bushnell?
CAO, can you answer, currently under the practice that we have, it is our board's discretion whether this is a combined office or not. So at any time we could change this currently?
Correct, and that is a part of the motives behind the opposition, is that it prohibits local control.
And that's where the local control I feel is important. And currently we could have at any time changed this, if this board wasn't happy with the way things are going, we could have at that time, or at any time, brought this forward. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I think we may have a little more conversation here, but I think we'll go to those in the public. We have one hand up on the phone. And if someone is in person here, oh wait, Regina, did you want to speak as under the public or as to add additional information?
Add additional
Okay,
information, if I
we're
may.
still on staff then.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, there's actually two offices that I think are getting confused. That is the public administrator and the coroner's office. So the investigation and the white Corvette that you're talking about, that was the public administrator, not the coroner. I don't have the history, but once upon a time, the public administrator and coroner offices were under one. You then brought both of them under the sheriff. So those are actually three different groups. And I do know that the sheriff has spoken to the CAO's office about the public administrator, and I believe that at a later date, there will be a presentation coming to your board about that, I know there was information that was released to the public about the investigation, but I think that the sheriff still intended to come to the board at some point and kind of talk about more of that. So I just wanted to be really clear that I believe that this bill is just about the coroner's office, doesn't change what you do with the public administrator. So that's all. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. All right, so we will go back to those on the phone. I only see one hand, so press *6 to unmute. And then we'll go to those in the public. In person.
Well, regarding the white Corvette, that was an interesting one there. It sounded like the testimony was a T-top was left outside in the parking lot for a year and a half. Of course, it was close to worthless. But I'm sure there would have been somebody out there who was willing to purchase that rather than have it crushed even in the condition it was and restore it just to say they could put a bumper sticker or something on it that says, "This is the white Corvette." Very marketable item. Unfortunately, of course, that's a thing of the past. There are concerns out there, and I don't know, I always try to play devil's advocate as far as what's going on, and there may be a concern that, let's say, I really appreciate how ours is run. I appreciate the person representing the coroner's office where the doctors come in without prejudice. That's absolutely necessary, especially in what you would call a officer-related shooting or a death possibly related to that. There is concern, I'm guessing, just guessing, statewide, that some kind of prejudicial autopsies or things are ongoing as far as people who died from these kind of things. So that may be where it's coming from. I personally think that the DHHS needs to be split up, and I personally think that the recorder and other people need to be split up rather than combined, recorder and elections. There's a whole bunch of departments that we support being, so this may be just the tip of the spear as far as this goes. I understand the savings of money. I do understand that, especially in a smaller community or smaller county such as Trinity County. You can imagine how much that would impact them. So it does need to be set out. So maybe, I don't know whether you just want to send something opposing this particular letter or ask to have a seat at the table as far as working on this particular thing that is moving through our Senate and our Assembly. So don't know the best way of handling that, but highly recommend that you do get a seat at the table. This is an important issue for all of us. And I do like county flexibility on things, but I do understand the potential of desire to have these be separate departments. All three of those, sheriff, coroner, and public, the administrators there who handle the wheels and things. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. So we will go to those in the public, and you can come forward. And again, this is specific to the creation of, the legislation. Welcome, Steve. So.
Thank you, Chair Bass. This particular topic is very near and dear to my history of late of my father's passing and my attempts to call and contact the coroner's office where there was enough benefit of the doubt to hope to have an expert opinion of my father's chemistry after his too soon passing. And so I would mark this as an urgent opposition for the consolidation of these officers and offices where transparency and the balance of powers from our founding fathers and mothers to right here today, so that others may have the privilege of knowing more specifically how their loved ones passed, and then proceed in a timely way for honorable celebrations of life and memorial services, and remembering these great people that have served our county in the variety of capacities that I continue to honor and thank, especially a retired coroner who lives in Fortuna, who travels to McKinleyville, who is one of the most trusted voices we have alive today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't see anyone else in the audience. We do have a motion. I had a comment to make, but I want to go to the other board members to see if there's any additional last-minute comments.
I have a question.
Okay,
Good,
that's
yeah.
good. That's great, too.
I was wondering, CEO Hayes, do you have an idea the cost that would incur from the separation?
I mean, just a very rough estimate. As Ms. Fuller indicated, the sheriff and I have had discussions about the public administrator and what it might look like to carve that component out. And that was looking like probably roughly $400,000. Right now, all three of these divisions share one department head. So that's certainly, if you separate them out, that's going to be a significant cost to add an additional department head to oversee the division. So, you could anticipate that salary being approximately $150,000 or more. From there, we would need to examine what resources are currently being shared and could no longer be shared to extrapolate those costs out further.
All right, and I think my comments, especially having gone through the consolidation in the past, is I do think this belongs in the purview of the board to at least, I appreciated the opportunity to be considerate in what we did. And so I'm supporting the letter of opposition right now. I would be hopeful that the language will change. A population exemption definitely could be something that would be helpful. Currently, it lacks clarity in language, and it even has a little confusion apparently about whether it's a county or a city that takes on this function. So I'm comfortable sending a letter now, but I actually would ask Supervisor Bone or I can look forward, or maybe one of our legislative teams, to see what does change with it, because I'd like to see this again, because we could wait till the language is more finalized, but I think this is the attempt to say, hey, this doesn't really work for everybody. So I don't know if that's something we could, it doesn't have to be at a board meeting. I just want to see this as it evolves. If we're going to send this letter, I want to see if it makes any difference.
We have been tracking this assembly bill for a number of months now and have been communicating with the sheriff and doing some cost reporting out to the legislative advocates who have been working on this. And we can certainly track it regardless of what happens to this letter. If there's board interest, we can provide some report outs.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Bushnell?
Well, I'm supporting this letter in context that local control is important, especially for small counties. Some reiteration of, like Supervisor Bone said and Supervisor Bass said, I anticipate will come back. I don't think that the mandates are hard for smaller counties, especially when it doesn't conform to what we have. I understand for the issues in bigger counties, LA County is huge and the separation is more feasible, I would believe, but I am going to support this letter in its form today.
Supervisor Madrone?
Well, I appreciate the discussion, and it's not the coroner, sheriff positions that I'm most concerned about. It's the public administrator and the issues that have happened there in terms of transparency. And I think, you know, when we're making estimates of what costs might be to do this, I don't think it's really fair to suggest that one person that's doing 3 jobs within one position and cost for that position is suddenly going to become 3 full-time positions to be able to administer that. You know, clearly, public administrator part of the job and the coroner part of the job are very small components of time being spent as compared to the sheriff's position as a whole. So, you know, if we're going to be making estimates, we really need to be making them, I think, accurate in terms of what the current workload is and what the separated workload might be. And I just don't see justification for suggesting that it would be a whole nother department head and the costs associated with that, et cetera. Not to differ with your opinions, because I respect that and I understand what you're saying, but it's just an observation. It's really the public administrator part of it that I really would like to see separated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. CAO Hayes?
Yeah, I can expand on that, how we came to that. And again, I preface it with it's a very rough estimate, but currently the sheriff has sworn personnel who is performing his public administrator duties, which is maybe not the most effective use of our sworn personnel. And so he would like to move into a model where these are unsworn civilian personnel who perform these functions. The cost estimate comes from needing roughly 3.5 FTE plus an office space plus, you know, computers and those sorts of resources to be established. I certainly, as I always do, push on the sheriff to see if he could maybe absorb those FTEs with internal personnel. And that's a continued conversation that we'll need to have both with your board and with the sheriff, but he felt like he didn't have the capacity to utilize his office assistants or legal office assistants that he currently has under the sheriff's division to perform these functions. And at this point in time, the public administrator functions are sort of not occurring in a robust manner as they should be.
Thank you. And I was asking Supervisor Bone for a confirmation. One of the things I'm also considering as we're sending this is, yes, I'm concerned about our county, right? But I do look at the 26 or 28 counties that are smaller than us who have to live with this as well. And in some ways, it's kind of like trying to look at that bigger picture. But again, I do believe we'll see changes in this and we'll hear more about it.
I know we're talking a lot about the public administrator, but that's not on, it's kind of, but it is coming back, as the sheriff has stated, to all of us, I believe. So, I mean, and we're all jumping on the bandwagon, but I mean, that will come to us at a later date. It's probably a good idea. That's where a lot of the issues remain. All I'm saying is this letter opposes the way it sits now. Now, if we don't send a letter in opposition, they says, nobody cares, let's just send it the way it is, and we lose all control, we lose everything else, I think. And you know, it's talk about, we have CSAC and RCRC and our own lobbyists who are our seat at the table. So we kind of depend on them to give us, you know, the feedback that our CAO's office needs and things like that. So I'm comfortable because I'm not comfortable with the way it sits right now. I'm not comfortable with the way it sits right now. So, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not, and it's going to happen in some form or another, but a lot of this, one size, the biggest problem is we lose control, and one size does not fit all. One size does not fit all.
I think we're ready for the vote tab to come up.
We don't.
I thought, oh, we don't have a motion. Well, I thought you did, but maybe do it again. Is there a motion, please? You thought you made one, you might as well make it now.
I'll make the motion that we send the letter.
All right. Sorry about that. Got your motions. Does everyone have their vote tab up? Okay. I'm just looking. Okay. Passes 3-2. All right. We'll move on to our, what was a 9:30 time set that became 10 o'clock item, and that comes to us from Planning and Building, and it's regarding cost recovery hearing on some properties. So at this time, I'd like to turn this over to Director Ford.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Good morning. John Ford and Karen Manell and Christine Warner with the Planning and Building Department to present a hearing on nuisance abatement assessment. You approved two of these earlier today on consent. The difference between those two and this one is that in this particular case, the property owner is disagreeing with the assessment that's been levied. So our code gives the property owner the opportunity to come and present their case to the board and for the board to make a decision on it. I just want to make sure before Ms. Manell begins the presentation that we have already expended these funds. So.
Good morning. I would like to let you know that, I'm Karen Maynell, the Code Enforcement Manager. I would like to let you know that the property owner is here with her family, I believe, Jessica Adams. So I will go ahead with the staff report, if that's...
Okay, yes, please.
Okay, great. All right, so what we're here for today is for the nuisance abatement appeal. So you're being asked to approve this assessment for $38,778.16. This is money for the county to recover in performing the abatement at 7218 Summit Ridge Drive in Humboldt Hill. As John already mentioned, the property owner appealed our notice of assessment, which places this item before your board. This case began in 2019, and it was in response to citizen complaints regarding conditions on the property. The violations found to exist on the property were fairly numerous. There were unpermitted structures, accumulation of solid waste, junk vehicles, and unsanitary conditions. There were also several aggressive dogs living on the property, making access difficult. The notice to abate nuisance was served on March 1st, 2021, and no appeal was requested. These first set of pictures are taken at that time. Instead, so there was no appeal requested for the notice to abate nuisance, which gave the county jurisdiction to abate the nuisance. However, we did enter into a compliance agreement with the property owner and provided 45 days for them to correct the violations. The compliance agreement ended in June 2021, and upon inspection, there was very little progress. There were still at least 5 junk vehicles, unpermitted structures, and a heavy accumulation of solid waste. So code enforcement was still receiving frequent complaints about the property. Because there had been some progress, we gave an extension to the compliance agreement. It was requested and granted for 30 days. Another inspection after those 30 days revealed that continuing violations were present. The property owner requested a second extension and was given an additional 14 days. A final inspection done in August showed conditions were much the same as before, and a third extension wasn't granted. So based on the condition of the property, the insufficient progress, and the continued complaints that came in, and also the length of time that this case had been in violation, it was determined that a county abatement would be necessary. The county entered into an agreement with Johns Group LLC. Johns Group was one of the contractors previously approved in the professional services agreement for county abatement work. The abatement of the property began in May of 2022 and concluded about a week later. At the conclusion of the abatement, the contractors, at the conclusion of the abatement, the contractor had disposed of 48 tons of solid waste, had removed all of the junk vehicles, and demolished all of the unpermitted buildings that are over 120 square feet. The contractor cost was $29,334. There was also $9,000 in administrative fees. That's staff cost, essentially. So the next set of pictures here that I'm going to show are going to be the post-abatement pictures. So the property owner objected to the abatement assessment. In her objection, Ms. Adams stated that there was property damage during the abatement process and that the contractor was not working the whole time that they were on the property, and therefore the labor costs were not correct.
I don't, not from the audience. There will be an opportunity, sir.
So although the contractor did take care to reduce the damage to the property while abating the nuisances, the abatement included removing 48 tons of solid waste that she considered her property and also demolishing several outbuildings. So the very nature of the abatement did in fact include some property damage. The contractor spent 27 and a half hours to remove the 48 tons of waste and junk vehicles. And according to the contractor, the property owner's son interfered several times and was disruptive to the abatement process, causing delays to the progress.
Excuse me, sir, I'll have to ask you to leave if you don't sit down, and you'll have your opportunity. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are going to continue on with the staff report, and then there'll be an opportunity to speak. Yes. All right.
The aggressive dogs on the site also caused delays and disturbances to the abatement process. The contractor estimated that there were approximately 14 labor hours that were spent dealing with the property owner's son and the disturbances in that process. So, those were not under the control of the contractor, yet his workers were required to be on site trying to get the work done while the disturbances were happening. So in this case, the property owner was given ample time and several opportunities to address the violations, and we continued to get numerous complaints, and the lack of improvement necessitated the county to step in. These, again, are costs that we have already expended, and at this point, there's no rational basis for reduction or elimination of the proposed assessment. Upon approval, we would be serving a notice of lien. If that had not been paid in 45 days, we would record that lien unless a payment agreement was brought before us before then. So this concludes my report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
All right. Are there any questions at this time before we do give the opportunity for the property owner to speak? All right. So this is the opportunity for the property owner and your team to have an ability to share your concerns and why you think we will explain why we're here today. And if you want a family member to be with you, that's fine, or they can speak in the 3-minute time frame later. And just please come forward, and let's shoot for maximum of 10 minutes as a presentation and see how this goes. And so are you all going to be presenting at this point? It looks like 2. Oh, all right.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing, and I need a hearing aid but haven't gotten it yet, so I couldn't hear anything you said.
We'd like an itemized list of everything that they.
Excuse me, sir. Can you tell us? That can be. Yes.
I'm sorry.
I guess perhaps so. Okay. I would say let's have just. We understand what you're saying about the itemized list, but there's a reason you filed the appeal, so perhaps you can give us why you think that it is not accurate.
Okay. Well, my son lives in a small trailer, and he's been keeping all of his stuff at my house, and he likes to work on vehicles, and so he's been putting them at my house so I could work on them, and motorcycles and bicycles and boats and all that. But I noticed that they took things that we really wanted, like my wood stove. I was getting ready to put it in the house, and they took that, and when we purchased it, it was $2,000. And also there was a lot of gravel in the backyard, and we used to have, what is it?
The pond. The pond. We used to have a pond and the big slab there that they.
Yeah, there were big cement slabs.
That were like that thick.
And they broke it all up, and it weighs a lot of, it was very large and it was very heavy. And they had no reason to take it. And
the tree.
Oh, we have pictures of our tree.
And the motorhome. And
well, we had a motorhome that
they moved across the way.
I tell you what, it's probably easier if just one of you is speaking. So if you'd rather have your son speak, that might be easier, because right now it's going back and forth.
I'm sorry,
and I know you haven't.
I can't hear you.
She said either you speak or I speak at one time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just easier for us.
Well, anyway, I'm trying to get my thoughts together here. Okay, and I had What kind of car was that they took?
Lexus?
Oh, I had a Lexus that ran, and I thought Christine saw it get to start, and that was a long time before it was taken away, but we lost the key, and it had groceries in the very back in the trunk and a lot of my items because we couldn't find the key, and I should have had another key made before they took it away because it ran. And in fact, I had someone that wanted to purchase it for $500. And so, and also there, we had my little grandson's here, he's in a wheelchair. But we had a tree house for him, and that was removed, but they also took part of the tree with it.
No, they broke it down.
Oh, they broke the tree down.
She said they purposely broke it down.
Purposely broke the tree down. And what else we're gonna say?
The cement slab, that.
Well, the cement slab was very, very
And
heavy.
then they spilled paint all in the driveway and scooped it up, and all the rocks went in there.
Oh, and
And all the rocks went in.
yeah, I'll let him talk, 'cause
Okay.
All right, you probably have about 5 minutes. All right, cool. If you have about 5 minutes left, so please go ahead.
Okay, I have a lawyer friend that was gonna be here today, but he had other arrangements. He asked me if we could get continuance with this, and he'll come in with me. Because on the paperwork, it says that she charged us for talking to our neighbors on the phone, all the phone calls, everything. I mean, there's all kinds of little loopholes that he's seen all kinds of stipulations that he said he could get into, but he couldn't be here right now. So we were just wondering if a continuance would be possible or whatever, so he could be here.
Just a minute. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all I can say right now.
Okay, so we're going to go to this next phase. If that's your presentation, if you guys want to sit in the front, it's probably easier because now it's going to be that you respond to questions from the board, but it's not, your presentation part is done from, if this is all you have to say right now, that's.
I mean, there's a whole bunch more. But
yes.
I mean, he could say it a lot better than I could.
Okay. All right, so duly noted that you were asking for a type of an extension.
Yes.
So if you will please sit up in the front, because I think there are some questions for you. And ma'am, you can sit closer by too, because we will be asking questions.
I'm just very worried because I'm elderly and I'm disabled. I'm supposed to have knee surgery, and I have my back, I have arthritis through my whole body, even my hand. And it's hard for me to move if I'm going to lose my home. And my son, Josh, said that he lives in Crescent City, that if I lose my home, I could stay with him, but he has a high staircase, and I can barely lift my right leg.
All right.
And so I'm just worried that, I might become homeless after living in that house for like 35 years. And it's hard for me to move and get things together.
Duly noted. Okay,
So I don't know what else to say. All I know is my son brought all this stuff to my house, and all that isn't mine. And I thought it would be temporary because when he works on things, he tries to sell it. And so he was trying to, work on lawnmowers and whatever he had.
And one more thing I'd like to know too is the pictures you showed weren't the ones that when we were cleaning up. It was a hell of a lot better than that when we were doing it. She showed pictures from the beginning.
All right, thank you. All right, so, and we have hit the 10 minutes, so we can have you sit down, and then we'll ask you questions. So thank you. Please sit down.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we did hear from the property owner. I don't know if staff had anything they wanted to respond to, and if not, I do know Supervisor Bone wanted to talk.
I just want to say one thing, that he's correct. The pictures I showed you were from the beginning of the process, but in your exhibit packet, attachment D are compliance photos after they did, after the compliance agreement was signed and they were working toward abating the issues themselves.
All right, thank you. Director Ford?
Thanks. I just want to clarify the action today. We're sympathetic to what Ms. Adams mentioned. We don't want her to lose her home either. The fact of the matter is, though, is there has been some cost here, and we're happy to try to work out an arrangement to get that cost reimbursed without going to extreme measures, perhaps even being able to avoid a lien. And so it's really just about first settling what the amount of the reimbursement is, and then working through some kind of plan to get that repaid.
All right, thank you, Director Ford. Supervisor Bone?
Yeah, this has been an issue with the neighbors, and, the neighbors don't like to say too much to their neighbors, so we get the phone calls. I appreciate code enforcement operating on this. And I'm going to take it for a whim that the cars that were towed off were all unregistered or late in registrations. I don't think we'd haul off a registered car. Is that right?
It's a junk vehicle or inoperable vehicle. They can be registered, but if they're junk or inoperable and not stored within an enclosed building, it meets the definition of a junk vehicle.
Okay. And then, John, you alluded to the fact that we're going to you would accept a payment plan that would be, or if not, we will put a lien on the property that will have to be settled upon any transfer or sale of that property. Is that right? Or would we evict the person?
No, so the way it would work right now is that this action today would set the amount for the assessment. We would be willing to enter into a repayment plan for a period of time with the property owner. And as long as that worked out, we would not then impose the lien. If it came to a point where the payment plan wasn't being followed and we had to impose the lien, then we would impose the lien. And since this is a cost that the county has actually incurred, it would go on the tax roll. And it would be placed on the tax roll by the auditor controller, and then it would be collected as part of the tax liability. And if it's not paid, then after 3 years, the county would have 3 years, would then have the ability to do something with the property to obtain repayment of the lien.
Okay. All right, because I look at the costs and I look what happened. I just dumped a little dump bed of stuff at the dump the other day, and it was $400. So I need to get a big dumpster. It looks like it's cheaper that way. But I'm just I know what the property looked like. I know I've been by it on occasions with neighbors' complaints. There is an issue. I know they're asking for a continuance today, but I'm hearing a lot of property of theirs was taken, but didn't we have a 60 and a 45 and then a 14-day extension given before? And at those times, I would have been thinking, hey, they're getting serious. I better get what I own that is important to me out of there. I mean, that would be my mindset. I'm going to come take this if you don't fix this. And then I got a continuance, and then I get another continuance, and then we're asking for a continuance today. It doesn't look like we're making much progress on the continuances unless we take action ourselves.
And just, I want to remind the people in the audience that this is time for the supervisors to ask questions. The presentation was earlier. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. So, Director Ford, this isn't a continuance. The appeal wasn't filed on a continuance. The appeal was filed on that they object to the amount?
Correct.
Okay, so the continuance wasn't part of the appeal?
Correct. That was something that was mentioned today.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I wanted to ask Karen do you know that when John's group was there removing items. I specifically wanted to ask about her vehicle that had groceries in it. Did anybody, do you know, was that vehicle identified as one that she was using, or?
For that specific question, I'm going to defer to Christine Werner, who is the assigned code compliance officer and was on site during the abatement process.
Okay.
Good morning, I'm Christine Werner. I'm an investigator with Humboldt County Code Enforcement, and this was my case. Regarding the Lexus, David did start it for me in August of 2021 when I was there on a site inspection, and he pulled it forwards and backwards and it moved. However, time went on and I was still working the case, and I came back, I believe, at the beginning of this year, and I think it had moved to another spot, and it appeared stationary. It was just never moving. I think I saw it on a dolly, like a car dolly at some point. I asked him to start it for me again. Hey, will you start that one for me? On a day when I went out to tag all the junk inoperable vehicles. So I asked him to please start the Lexus for me at that time. He said he didn't have the key. Therefore, he was not able to start it and prove to me that it was still in operable condition. And so I tagged it with a junk vehicle tag and sent out all the appropriate applicable notices for that process. And then it did end up getting removed. I think that during the warrant process, he had placed it on the car dolly and moved it down to Broadway and Allard next to Buck Sports, and parked it on the street there. And I saw it when I was driving out to Humboldt Hill during the abatement process. And so I knew he had abandoned vehicles from that property onto Allard off of Broadway. And so my warrant was for, I believe, 2 weeks. So after Memorial Day, I went back and I did ask Johns to remove it because it was back on the property. It was on a dolly. He didn't have a key. He couldn't start it. I let Jessica take some of the belongings out. I believe he got some tires out of the back seat, and his grandmother's Bible was back there. And so he was able to get his possessions out, but the groceries, I don't think that they could get out because of the lack of a key. And I think that one of the things also that David is wanting to bring up, that he didn't bring up during his time, was there was a structure in the front yard that there was a miscommunication between us clearly about. He thought he could put all of his tools in it and they would somehow be safe there from the abatement day. I had told them anything in the breezeway, they have a breezeway between their garage and their house. I told them anything in there we're not going to touch. They asked me not to take a wheelchair and a metal cart in the backyard, so we didn't take those. But I told him on the final inspection before the abatement day started that I wasn't sure about the open, it was like a tarp type structure in the front yard, and it only had one side covered. And I told him it looks like it's over 120 square feet. It's not, really a structure because it's open on at least two sides. So that one, I'm not sure if that one's going to be keepable. I don't know if that one's going to be able to stay. And I couldn't measure it before the abatement day because of all the debris around it. So I wasn't able to get measurements until the abatement day when it got cleared, space got cleared out around it. Then I was able to measure it. It was 150 square feet. And so we took it. But somehow I think he had gotten it in his mind, and I'm not sure how that one was safe and was not going to go anywhere. And so that, I think, is one of the things that he wanted to bring up, that he wasn't able to get in. But that's why the Lexus was taken, was because it did start last summer. But, time passes and it was in the same spot, and I just didn't think it was operable anymore, especially when I saw it on a car dolly. So, but it was noticed.
Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Bone, did you have a question for her?
I wanted to finish if I could.
Okay, I was just going to, if she's up, shall we just ask her to stay up? I don't know if you're asking a question, that's why.
I'm not asking a question of her. I was going to ask a question of the lady. But
all right, no, that's
fine.
fine.
No, if he has a question of her.
No, that's right. He can bring her back up.
No, bring her.
Did you say you have a question for me?
I have a question of you. I'm wondering if if Director Ford keeps this, the abatement amount in-house, are you able to make payments?
Well, my income is extremely low. I'm on disability and Social Security. And I don't know, I would like to, but I can barely make my bills as it is. So maybe if David can help me make some of the payments. He's also on Social Security, so he doesn't get very much from me either. So I would like to.
So this has to be arranged to be paid somehow. So it either has to be paid through a lien process or an arrangement that can be made with Director Ford in the Planning and Building. So I would like for you to sit down and think about it, possibly while maybe Supervisor Bone has some more questions, but you need to really think about how you can get this repaid, and then maybe we can ask you some more questions. Thank you.
If it was low enough.
Thank you.
Or if there's anything else that I could do. Thank you.
All right, we will be going to members of the public shortly. I do believe Supervisor Bone had a question for Christine. So you can, please sit down, ma'am. And
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
oh, please sit down. There you go. All right, thank you. Good. And Supervisor Bone.
What was the date of your final inspection report when you decided, and the date that John's group mobilized in? What was? Give me an estimated time. Was it the next day? Was it 3 weeks?
Oh, no, it was about 6 weeks. I believe the
so
final
the tags were on the
inspection-
cars. So if the cars wanted to be moved back down to Allard, which I got complaints about, moved back down to Allard, they had plenty of opportunity. What I'm trying to get at is we're finding out that there was a lot of things of perceived value that could have been moved. There was a large amount of time, besides the other 3 continuances, to remove said products or possessions, and that did not seem to take place.
Correct.
Okay,
So I believe it was in the middle of April, around April 12th or 13th, that I tagged the vehicles as junk inoperable and sent the notices out around the middle of April, and it gives them 10 days to remove the vehicle or get it operable, or move it into a garage. And then the abatement began in the last, I believe it was the last week, full week of May. Like on the Wednesday before Memorial Day is, I believe, when it began.
May 23rd.
Okay. So a full week before Memorial Day, the abatement started. So they had a period of approximately 5 or 6 weeks to remove the vehicles and also any possessions that they wanted. And I do believe that David moved quite a bit of the stuff into the house, from the yard into the house.
all right, thank you. Any other questions at this point, or we can go to public comment? Public comment? Okay. All right, so we will go to public comment next. We have one hand up. So 7454. And press *6 to unmute. And
Ken Swatsky, I support staff recommendation on this one. The only thing of contention I have here is it's been alleged by the person who's making their appeal here that they had an attorney who requested a continuance because he didn't have an attorney who couldn't be here. And yet, at this time, I think it would be in your best interest to go ahead and have the name of that attorney. And then I would question further not granting the continuance based upon the fact that an attorney was aware of this. And unless you have a record of that attorney reaching out to county council or your controller, John there, then I think I would feel free it moving forward. Otherwise, hearsay as far as an attorney who can't come, I would not even consider under these circumstances as far as that. Now, if the appellant here can come up with an attorney and a way of contacting that attorney, and the attorney was able at this time during the hearing to verify that this, and the attorney would be asking for a continuance, then you would have cause. Otherwise, I see no cause for continuing this to another time. You've done a lot of continuing already. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. So before we go to members that are here in person, just a reminder, it's a strict 3-minute time period. When your time is up, we just ask you to leave the podium. So please come forward. And just a general reminder to others, this is about this one specific abatement issue. So welcome,
Sure.
sir.
Sure. Okay. So I'm her other son. I'm Josh. I've talked to a couple people around here a few times over the phone. Okay. So I just moved back from the military. Okay. Came back. This has been going on for years. This is a circle. This is a circle of problems that has been going on for years. I don't know why there's been a blind eye to this whole situation for years. Seems like the police don't want to get involved. Animal control only wants to do so much. And it sounds to me like this county has a lot of problems with financial issues as well. Okay, this is the house I grew up in. If no one can see that she's been taken advantage of for years, then this county's blind. She's on Social Security, she's disabled, she is my mother, but I feel like ever since I moved back here and retired from the military, Adult Protective Services, or whoever's been getting my phone number has been calling me as a loophole to find out, well, she could just leave Humboldt County. She could go to Del Norte County, live with her other son. So it's no big problem if her house is collected on. See the big picture here. See the record that's obvious. That's all I ask. I mean, there's no way she could pay back this debt. There's no way. There's some major hoarding issues going on. I get that. To see my mom lose her house, for this county to say, well, she's got a loophole, she could go somewhere, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I feel like you guys know that there's no way she could ever pay this back. And I do feel that it's just a simple resolution to just take it from her rather than get rid of the real problem. Okay, so I don't know what else to tell you. I know my time is probably running really short, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't important to me. All right. I know none of them would be here. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't important to them, except for the dollar amount. But unless there's an itemized list on everything that was taken from the house, which obviously either doesn't have to be produced or maybe there is one in existence, I would like to see one and look over with my mom. Because I do feel that maybe there was a lot of stuff taken that should not have been taken. Cars, I get that. Junk, I get that. But to see that, to look at my mom as if she can totally help herself, that's a mistake. And I feel like you guys are just taking the easy road. And maybe not you guys, but the county. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Josh. All right, welcome.
Once again, I'm Steve Davis, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to address our chair, Virginia Bass, our vice chair, Steve Madrone, our supervisor, Michelle Bushnell, all of our supervisors, and Director Ford. First and foremost, we must strengthen neighbor-to-neighbor interaction, doing the best we can to help each other, to make sure no one is getting to a code requirement with compliments to Christine Werner. Code enforcement, from my listening and learning abilities from the Department of Health and Human Services, coming together at our Humboldt Area Foundation in the city of Eureka, is a very challenged job. And $400 to the dump is a lot of money. And I absolutely insist that we do not put a lien on this property, that we do all we can to improve Ms. Jessica Adams' property and the family that is well represented here, including planting another tree, bringing together quality landscaping materials, and trying to work as a community in the Humboldt Hill area where property values go up, and rightfully so, because in that same area is a group home that did not have an extra place for my father to go to when he needed one from St. Joseph Providence Hospital. And I truly believe that when Humboldt County can work together, we can make sure there is the most beautiful travels around our country roads and everywhere, and no more vehicles left. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trying to get that abatement connection there. All right, is there anyone else in the public who wish to comment before we go back? Because I have a question for staff too. So I see no one else coming forward. I guess since, Karen, you were going to say something, can I ask you a question? Maybe you can answer it, or Christine as well. You know, it's been mentioned more than one time about a list of what was taken and things that shouldn't have been taken. Is there a legal or an explanation one of you can provide that is what is okay to be taken? Or is there anything that's not okay to be taken? I mean, legally. Thanks.
Yeah, it is in the code. I can't recite it for you verbatim here, but there is a definition of solid waste and where it can be stored and how much you can have on your property that's outside of an enclosed building. And that is all dictated by the code. We do not keep a list of items that we take that are considered solid waste in these cases. We just don't keep a list. The only list of anything would be the list of the vehicles, because we do have the letters that we send out to the registered owners notifying them that we're going to be taking them. Yeah, the solid waste maximum outdoor solid waste is 200 square feet. Thank you, Christine. And then I also just wanted to address the the sensitivity of this case, in that, we do have a homeowner who, has, some people living with her that may or may not be, bringing the items onto the site, and it may not be her items. We did contact Adult Protective Services back in the summer of 2021. We again contacted them this spring during the course of the abatement to make them aware of the situation. And I'm not exactly sure of the status of the case, but yeah, I believe we just were notified this week or last week that that case has been closed by Adult Protective Services with no real changes. So, we do reach out. We reach out to animal control and other social services, when we see that these cases can be benefited by it, but we don't have control over what happens to those cases with those different agencies.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Madrone.
So when a lien is placed on a property, do you have to make payments on that, or is the other option that it gets settled upon sale of the property?
When the lien's placed on the property, that lien can be paid, but it can also be become part of the property tax billing. We also have the ability to record a lien onto a property, and then if the person comes in to make a payment plan, we can release that lien. It's not just a one-way process. We do, Director Ford has a lot of leeway as far as negotiating and working in payment plans and compliance agreements and those kinds of things. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not lost on me that the ability of the property owner to be able to pay anything is going to be almost impossible. I mean, as stated by one of her sons. It also seems apparent to me, although, you know, you never know, there's always a lot of pieces to these things, but it also seems apparent to me that the mother, the owner of the property, wasn't necessarily the one bringing in the bulk of the solid waste and the cars and the rest of it. That was really another son that, as one son said, although he didn't say it specifically, but inferred, was being taken advantage of in terms of all this debris coming in with promises it would go somewhere, but it didn't, and it just kept getting worse. So I recognize that property owners, excuse me, certainly have a responsibility to control their property. But it's interesting to me that APS was involved, but then the case is closed and nothing changed, nothing happened, when clearly there is stuff going on. People being taken advantage of. It's not our job per se to do that, but I would have hoped that APS, and they're not here today, I assume, it certainly would be nice if we would know more about why wasn't something done? Why was the case closed? What's going on? There's kind of a bit of missing information there for me. I do know, working with a lot of seniors in Humboldt County, that there is this fear of getting APS involved, because then suddenly you might end up in a conservatorship and you lose all your freedoms, and other people start making decisions for you. And so there is definitely a concern about people often don't ask for help in those situations because of the fear of what that might trigger. I know Connie's here, and perhaps she can share with us some more stuff about APS, but I'm really struggling with this one, frankly. Clearly, there was a lot of debris, a lot of problems. As one son stated, it's been going on for a long time. But who's really liable for this? How do we deal with that? And if there were some way that a lien, if the only result is to place a lien because of the county's cost, it'd be nice if it was a completely deferred payment lien, until sale of the property or something like that. Because I don't want to see somebody lose their home. So I'm struggling with this one on many levels. But I appreciate the work that staff have done to try and resolve it, all the extra time that was given, et cetera. But yeah, Connie, if you could shed some light on the APS part, that'd be great. Thank you.
I understand you can't say anything specific on the
Yeah.
case, but perhaps generalities is what, yeah.
I can't even at this point confirm or deny that we have a case or we had a case, but I was typing as you were speaking and others were speaking to let me know what happened in this case. And I would also ask that staff from planning and building, when there are issues and you have worries, if you would contact me or the manager of Adult Protective Services when those issues occur. I would love to hear that and be more involved in that. And there's a lot of things that we don't know that are happening with this family. I'll just say that.
Yeah, understood. Well, I will say that my one experience with APS was actually very positive with an individual in McKinleyville who had a completely overgrown property, and it was infested with rats because of all the wood rat habitat. And APS was able to bring in that youth corps team to come in and clean the property up and do all kinds of things. So that was a positive experience that I personally had with APS working to help an individual that really needed that help. So thank you.
Sure.
And Supervisor Bushnell and then Bone, I didn't know. No, Supervisor Bone?
I think I've had numerous contact with APS and contact with neighbors and stuff like that. And there was a problem. There has been contact. We just had a son that came out of the military that sounded like he had been contacted repeatedly by APS. So, and I don't want to argue with him, but I can't say just move her to Del Norte was their statement. I don't believe anybody in our office would do that. I don't think Connie'd allow that. And I don't think that's not a pattern and practice that I've ever noticed. So with that being said, bottom line is I've got 12 more of these that I can think of right off the top of my head right now probably 4 or 5 of the same situation, multiple family members, hoarding, everything else. If we want to start picking up the tab for those, then we better decide how we're going to change their budget, where we're going to change, because there's probably a minimum of $5 million out there, because at $5,000 a motorhome and everything else. John will tell you that I've got 3 or 4 that I'm calling on consistently that I get to drive by on a daily basis, and I wonder what the heck's going on. So I was really excited to see this start in 19, and we're this far in 22. So, and you can imagine, I don't need to bring the picture up, this isn't a remote area. This is surrounded by residential homes with children. And there was an infestation, there was a lot of problems. And I think much to the respect of everybody involved, I don't think it was mentioned how bad, we didn't have a key. I heard about the groceries, and I'm sorry about the lost groceries, but we didn't have a key to get the groceries. So I'm pretty sure the ice cream went bad. But I mean, as we move forward, this had to be cleaned up. It has to be repaid somehow, and I fully agree. I don't think anywhere in here that John Ford or Karen or anything else wants to be the ogre and throw anybody out, nor do I think anybody's going to get thrown out. And what this lien on the property is going to be is when it's going to be it's going to be on the tax bill, and it's going to be a lien. It's that how we eventually, if she can't pay it, and then when there is a transfer to the son that left, to whatever the case may be, that's when it'll have to be settled upon. But the problem being is I understand, and I feel terrible that they're in this position. We're not throwing them out of the house. They should be happy as a clam. The place looks great now. The little one has somewhere to play. I mean, it made a big difference, and the neighborhood appreciates the big difference. So with that being said, I don't know what John's parameters can do to settle this. Is it $25 a month? Is it, I mean, we're getting to the point in no interest, but there are a lot of these out there, and you know this as well as I do, Supervisor Madron. You've got a lineup of them out there. So we're going to have to deal with them. And behind, you know, there's a million stories in the city, and we can't pick up the tab on all of them. But I'm not saying I don't want to take the house, because there's no value, you know. So I think try to work with them as well as possible. I think John has a great knack of making that happen, and I think he will. So as I think we move forward, I don't want to see her out of our house. I sympathize with, and thank you for your service, sir. I appreciate, I think he's going to play a bigger part, but if, as you said, nothing was said directly, but his frustration level is up to here. And the other thing is he wants to look out for his mother, which I think is honorable and admirable, and I appreciate that. So we will work with them in any way we can, but we can't dismiss. We have to move forward with somehow, because as was stated earlier, we did 2 of these this morning. And just because they didn't show up, once, if they show up, are we going to do this? How many times are we going to do this? And our hands are going to be tied, and the budgetary concerns won't be there.
Supervisor Bushnell and Supervisor Wilson.
I think the 2 this morning were different. I think they were deceased. But I wanted to ask Director Ford, my understanding is when you put a lien on through the tax collector, after 3 years, 2 or 3 years, it will force a lien self to recover taxes.
That is correct. I think the thing that we're proposing is we would try to work out a period of time. It can't be for forever. It can't, to recover this cost, it can't be $25 a month.
So
But-
even if, and so even if we did 24 months, that would be $1,600 and some change a month. And I don't think Miss Adams, is it Miss Adams? Is that her name?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think Miss Adams can afford that, according to her. So is there a possibility, well, so if we were to put a lien against the house, is that even a possibility that when it's sold, then we would recover?
So that's something that Ms. Manell and I were talking about, whether or not we are locked into the type of lien that we impose. One of the things that we can look at is to look and see if we can impose a a different type of lien that would sit on the property and then become due and payable when the property is sold.
So,
I'm not sure we can. I don't want to promise that.
right, I understand that. So would it need to come back here then, or?
If you want certainty on that, if you want certainty on options, it needs to come back, yes.
Okay, so also I have a question. Do we, I don't, I want to be kind here, but is the son living in the home? And I want to try to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Can I ask Christine to come up and speak about current conditions?
What? Yeah, he's at the trailer park.
So David, her son, who, that is his stuff on the property, he does not live on the property. He uses it to warehouse his belongings because he lives in a trailer park, so he doesn't have space for them. And I'm sorry.
You still live there. I had to leave because of.
He goes there quite often to shower and do laundry and such and work on vehicles. But I'm sorry, I forgot the other part of the question.
So my concern is that it'll be reoccurring.
Yes.
Oftentimes we see this. And so while we are going to want to try to work with the landowner, I don't want to get in this position. I don't want this county to get in this position again.
Okay, so speaking as to that, the current conditions of the property are such that I am getting ready to issue a notice of violation with civil administrative penalties because there's about at least 3 junk vehicles in the front yard. There's trash bags ripped open. There's a lot of scrap metal, and they've also, David has put it on the neighbor across the street. He's dumped items
Excuse me,
there as well.
excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir, you haven't been asked a question yet. Thank you.
So
Thank
I
you very
am
much.
getting a lot of complaints about the property.
So this was done in April, correct? This
It
cleanup
was-
was done in April of 22?
It was May, the end of May of 2022, that the actual cleanup occurred. And so actually during the abatement process, David brought a junk vehicle back. That's the Lexus that I towed, or that we removed as part of the abatement.
How he got it back?
Right, he had moved it to Allard. We did the abatement. The
Oh,
property was
yeah,
free
I
and
understand
clear.
that, okay.
And then over the
Yeah.
weekend, I
Yeah.
came back on Tuesday and he had brought it back onto the property.
Can,
And so, yes, it's going to be an ongoing, as Josh Adams said, it's just a vicious circle.
Okay, thank you
Never
for that.
ending.
Director Ford, in a situation like this where it's ongoing, what do we do?
can we put conditions?
So I think the thing that I would like to propose is that Mr. Adams brought up that there's a deeper problem here, and that you continue this, allow DHHS and Planning and Building to come back and develop a strategy for a comprehensive strategy for dealing with this.
How long would you like the continuance for?
Give us a month.
So
The first meeting in September is September 20th.
is what?
September 20th.
So I'll make a motion that we continue this, bringing it back September 20th with options and plans to work with the landowner.
Correct.
I'll second. I would ask that, one of the things that was discussed here was the mechanisms of the lien and what types of liens exist, and I would like to add to that some minor report back on what those options look like, and what our jurisdiction is in that, really. So, thanks.
Supervisor Bushnell and Bone, or Bone then Bushnell?
What? No, I'm gonna, knowing that since I was by there, and it has started again, and it's gonna start again, it's gonna start again. When you bring something back in a month, I'll give another extension for a month. But I think it better be all encompassing, that we can use this on all like situations. because this is not a rare situation, and I'm not gonna, we're not gonna go, the problem is we're not gonna have, you know, and you're right, the ones this morning were different. They were deceased, but they had heirs. What I'm saying is, we need to find a different way to approach this, because I'm seeing right now why this takes 4 and 5 years to get an abatement process through. And that's okay for us, because they're working, everybody's working and everything else. How do you think the person living next door to it feels? This is not what a neighbor needs to put up. We need to find a way to fast track this, because there's no good way to look at this. This is a mess that brings an infestation, which moves on when the food source goes away to somebody else that has a food source. So as we do this, this is an issue, and we've probably had 30 of these over the last 10 years I've been here, where, you know, everybody's saying, well, it's not that bad, and then it gets that bad again, and we're back doing it again. And so we need to find a way that we can help you. And we've expanded code enforcement. I mean, compared to when they were across the street and there were 2 people in the, so how can we help you? Because this is it's a bad cycle, and we need to fix it. And I'm not exactly sure how we track it. When we get the complaint, how long it takes till we actually do something. And I know there are certain rights involved, but and the transparency, and I know all the buzzwords, but I'm saying the neighbors are the ones that are getting impacted. And there's only 10 or 12 of them up there, but they're pretty upset.
Perhaps there could be a future item also, though, to kind of explain this in all situations of the, for instances. So if you wanted to answer Supervisor Bone, but then I had Supervisor Wilson and then Supervisor Madrone.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Bass. I think that this does point out that oftentimes in these situations, it's more than just the junk on the property. There are some deeper things that need to be addressed. And I think that this will give DHHS and Planning and Building an opportunity to talk about how to really put together a team approach to address the issues that exist and not address them independently.
We have an intern, it appears. They start young. Did you, I had these 2 in line for a question, and you started this one, so okay, yes, Supervisor Wilson, then Madrone, then Bushnell.
I mean, we have an intersect of public health, mental health, housing, you know, security, conflated or with our what we believe to be the right of property ownership, and the capacity of property ownership in this case. And I think we're going to have to really, that is really what we're battling here. And so I appreciate you bringing something back and taking a look at this a little more deeply. It's sad. This sucks. I mean, but we've seen it before. We're gonna see it again. And I appreciate the compassion of our staff at all levels on this. And I appreciate Supervisor Bone's perspective with relationship, not just the compassion of this postage stamp property, but the postage stamps around it, and the impact of them. We all see it as supervisors, and so with that, I'm ready to vote for the continuance.
All right, Supervisor Madrone.
Yes, I totally support the motion for continuance, and I really like the discussion here in terms of maybe we're moving towards more of a team approach in dealing with these things, because clearly many of these go way beyond just the debris and the solid waste and things like that. And, you know, when you think about adult protective services, you would hope that that's exactly where that might come into play, when clearly somebody is being taken advantage of. I mean, really the liability here, from everything I can tell, falls with the son in terms of bringing in all this debris over and over again, and that it's already happening again within 2 months of it being cleaned up. Wow. Okay, so I like the idea also of trying to create a lien that is payable upon sale. But look forward to when you bring it back to us and figuring out what to do. Also appreciate Grandpa Bones.
Yeah.
Work here today in terms of speaking to the bigger picture. So thank you.
And Supervisor Bushnell.
I just want to say, like the rest of my fellow supervisors, I am sympathetic to the neighbors. It is, we have a lot of these going around, and it's not comfortable to live next to it. And also, planning and building sometimes take a lot of heat and for not moving fast enough, and here we are continuing it, and I recognize that. I do think that this is I don't know if it's unique or not, but it is hard to not try to work with the landowner when you're going to be, the end result may be that they're homeless. So I just want to recognize that.
Great, thank you. And I just, to me, a huge piece of this is going to be, I don't want to put a lot of burden on the son up in Del Norte, but someone's got to monitor that property and see anything that's dropped there. I mean, and he's not in the room right now. Hopefully there will be a plan that somehow someone keeps it from getting any worse and hopefully better. So, do we have is our vote tab up? It's taking me a second trying to get there. Hello? I think I got booted off. Wait. Just love. I think I got kicked out. Okay. Yeah, let's just do a roll call vote. Apparently, my computer needed a break, I guess.
Supervisor Bone?
Yes.
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes, and also thanks to staff. It sounds like you guys have worked really hard on this.
Supervisor Wilson?
Affirmative.
Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, it passes 5-0. All right, so thank you everyone for the attention to this item, and now we will move on to our previously 10 o'clock time set. And I'd like to ask County Council to brief us, and we will take, let's say a 10-minute break before we go in there, max. But yes, can you brief us on this?
Thank you, Chair Bass. It is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California.
Excuse me, you guys. Can you please, we'll just wait till everyone leaves, they leave the room and you're able to have a conversation. Steve, please take the conversation out of the room. Yes, County Council. Excuse me.
It is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Sections 54954.5 and 54957 in order to consider the public employee performance evaluation for the positions of the Agricultural Commissioner and the Public Defender. It is also the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6 in order to review the county's position and instruct its designated labor negotiators.
All right. Oops, I'm sorry. You're still going.
Still
You
going.
took a breath. I'm just.
It is still the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 D2 and E3 in order to discuss exposure to litigation in one potential case regarding Humboldt County's alleged failure to comply with its duty to consider and protect the public trust uses of the lower Eel River from adverse effects from groundwater extractions during late summer of low water years. And finally, it is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9 D1 in order to discuss existing litigation in the cases of Friends of the Eel River versus County of Humboldt et al., Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 180495, and Tiffany Hunt Nielsen versus Kelly E. Sanders, Humboldt County Superior Court Case number CV 2201226.
All right, thank you. So we'll go to those in the audience first. Is there anyone that's here with us that would like to comment on this item? And I do not see anybody. So we'll go to those on the phone, and we do have one hand up, 7454.
Virginia, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Yes, before I get started here, I assume we won't be anticipating coming back until 1:30. You can clarify that after I'm done speaking. The item number 5, of course, is Friends of the EO. Item number 6 is also Friends of the EO, and it looks like it goes back to 2018. As far as I can tell, there was a settlement possibly involving this between Friends of the EO that the County of Humboldt may not have held up to regarding cannabis issues. That's the best I can tell. Regarding item number 7, this one's kind of been put out there. Why is Tiffany Hunt Nielsen suing Kelly E. Sanders? And I think it's a very simple thing as far as I've been able to figure out. In her statement, you know, on election, when you get to make a little statement about yourself, there was a statement I believe that she made. She was the only person who has served both in both capacities as far as elections and as far as the other recorder's office. And I believe this was just to get clarity, instead of dropping that whole statement, was possibly just to say that she did serve in both this one and the other. Should be a pretty easy fix if that is the one. I do find questions regarding when somebody's in one department and possibly the contention of inaccuracies is coming from another department, which is being run by someone running against this person in a race. So there's something in here that I don't know exactly, but that always comes to mind regarding conflicts of interest. I have been having some problems with some things in elections regarding how they handle certain paperwork and how that's dispersed. I was told that had to be changed on the state level. So anyway, I wish you luck in your closed session items here, and hopefully you will get Tiffany Hunt Nielsen's request taken care of in some way to make it happen, so that you don't drop that whole sentence and just the one word or two there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And again, my question as closing would be, when do we anticipate coming back from closed session?
All right, thank you. Every time we try to guess on when we're going to be back, we tend to be wrong. But do you think it's safe to say 1:30? Or
Yeah, I think it's safe to say 1:30.
and Supervisor Madrone will not be joining us this afternoon because he has a conflict, correct? Okay, so I just wanted to let folks know in the public, and when they tune in, if you're not here, it's because you had a conflict. So at that point, we will actually convene at 11:30 in closed session. That gives us 12 minutes, or 13. Because I All right, well, welcome. There'll be no report yet out of closed session because we're still in we're going back in closed session. So this is the time where members of the public can comment on items that are not on the agenda. Like you guys all know very well, 3-minute time limit, and look at the board when speaking. And I think those are basically the only rules as far as I can think of. So we do have 2 members I know that signed up. We have one hand in the public. And if anyone else is interested on this, making comment on items not on the agenda, you should press star 9 now so I know that you're there. I see one. Is that? Okay. Yes. So whoever is 2140, just press star 6 to unmute and you'll have 3 minutes. All right, 2140, press star 6. Okay, we're going to go back. We're going to come back to that one. Okay, I think they're unmuted now. All right, welcome, and you have 3 minutes.
May I ask has the closed session concluded?
Well, some of the closed session items have, yes. But this would not be the time to comment on closed session items. That would have been earlier.
Okay.
This is for items, items not on the agenda.
All right. My name is Jerry Denzis. I reside in and am a registered voter in Jefferson County, Colorado. I'm a graduate of Humboldt State University and more recently the Sturm College of Law, University of Denver. I own a parcel in Humboldt County and I am a friend of Juan Cervantes. The county will be deciding how to respond to Ms. Nielsen's petition.
I'm sorry, sir, I'm sorry. That was earlier today, and we can't go back on that one. This is for items not on the agenda.
Okay. That I didn't have any comments for items not on the agenda.
All right.
But thank you for reaching out.
All right, and because we did miss you, please do send an email if you haven't already, so at least we do get a copy of those concerns. All right, we'll go to the next on the phone is 0116.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Ash, welcome.
Yeah, good. Ash Teeter here. Hope everyone's doing well today. I just wanted to speak again just on, an upcoming monkeypox or whatever they're going to throw our county's way, just being more careful than with the COVID as to following the I don't know if you've heard about the sudden adult death syndrome that's been sweeping the world following the COVID jabs that came out.
Ash, hold on hold on a moment, Ash and Brooke, stop. I believe there was an item referencing monkeypox this morning that was on a consent calendar. Just wanted you to know. But if you'd like to add some other comment on here, this would certainly, you have your time left for that. Where'd he go? Are you still there, Ash?
I've asked him to unmute. We'll see if.
Okay. Okay, you're back.
Okay.
Okay.
Cause unknown. Known causes was the leading cause of death in Alberta last year. That category leads the way over dementia, which has been in the top spot since 2016.
You better hope you don't contract unknown cause of death because there's a lot of people dying from it. Let's hear more. A couple of years ago, unknown cause of death was unknown. There were just a mere 500 or so. If you ever look at this graphic of unknown causes. Look at that. In 2019, there were just 500 unknown causes of death. Now it's 3,362. The leading cause of death is unknown. You're more likely to die from an unknown cause in a first world society than anything else. There's a lot of unknown cause going around. What are the early symptoms? The warning signs of unknown cause. Beats me, nobody knows. That's why they call it unknown cause. What's causing all this unknown cause of death? Is it climate change? Transphobia? Or could it be? No, it couldn't. We'll take it from here, buddy.
Yeah, it does coincide with the release of the treatments being called vaccines for COVID. And this also coincides with a records request I did on total deaths in Humboldt County, where going back 15 years, like the year that the jabs came out, up above 15,000, and in all years prior, not over, too much over 13,000. So it's like 200 more deaths in 1 year after the jabs came out. And it is a local thing, and it's not being looked into. I mean, I personally spoke to someone who works at the coroner's office, and they said that there is pressure not to talk about, anything out of the ordinary there. I've also talked to medical professionals saying that there is pressure for them to stay silent on things out of the ordinary as well. Just saying that it's very concerning that, we're following the global lead and trying to, put a muzzle on what our local people have to say about it, while only going to the CDC or whatnot, who just came out and they admitted that their response was a failure, and that the science, pretty much there was no science that they based it on, so they have to restructure is what they're saying. And now Fauci is leaving in December, I guess, so he's stepping down, I guess trying to get ahead of any potential lawsuits or legal investigations with the probable shift in Congress in the upcoming elections. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Just, in the future, don't follow the globalists. Let's not muzzle our local people trying to speak out on potential issues here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ash. And we have 7454.
Virginia, can you hear Ken Swatsky now?
Yes, welcome.
I couldn't find monkeypox on there. I saw where a bunch of monkey business was being done, but I didn't see that itemized in the consent calendar or anything discussed so far. But anyway, that's just, I guess, a side issue. I did wish to make comment on something here. We have an extreme dysfunction regarding your response to public records requests. You're looking at a long list of potential litigation regarding that, and I know you don't like me mentioning names, but back originally set up under the guidance of John Quincy, and the rules and how this all works and the lack of responses coming, we continually get responses back, and I understand he's kind of out of that, but he's still in the same office there. We continue getting responses back that we have nothing to comply with your request, no documents, but these are times when we've actually sent documents in ourselves, and when we do pin them down on this, sometimes we get a large amount of requests. So the public's getting a little irritated with the process. It's not being followed as far as 10 days, even as far as responses go frequently. And quite often, those of us who know what we're doing have to have an attorney go ahead and prompt the county to go ahead and do these things. And of course, once the attorney does that, and it's non-complicit, then you're ending up with a lawsuit. I think you have at least one or two from Lost Coast. I am considering one. Hopefully we will work out something before that actually happens, where there are certain records you have with the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office regarding what I refer to as the deadbeat farmers. And it was alleged this was proprietary information which is available through your building department also. And so these kind of things do not bode well when certain people are perceived to be being protected because they're politically connected or something. And I highly recommend that you get your ducks in a row regarding public records requests. It's very irritating to take the time to actually have to go after them in this manner. The other thing is those of us who do them request that instead of having these done where we have to unblock them from the public, we want the public to have them. The people who don't want the public to have them should be going ahead and precluding the rest of the public from seeing these documents. That's how it should be. Unfortunately, it's not. It's also very difficult to download and understand the process and actually get your documents. And so that's something that needs to be worked on. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at, like I say, a flow of lawsuits that will be unbelievable, coming from all different directions, the media, the public, and myself included. So thank you for my opportunity to speak on your lack of following through on public records requests in a correct manner.
All right, thank you. So then we'll go to those who are here in person. And I know our first speaker's Charles. And Charles will be followed by Genevieve, then followed by Steve. So welcome, Charles.
My name is Charles Wilson. My wife and I like to talk to people. One time we got at the casino, we talked to somebody from 10 o'clock till 7:45 the next morning. I forget what we talked about, but the thing is, we like to talk and with people. We're not one-sided. We like to hear what they say and all that. I calculated, well, my wife likes to talk about the vaccines and stuff like that. Okay. After 6 years, I calculated she talked about, say, 15, 20 a day, 6,000 a year, say 24,000 people she's talked to. I thought, oh, I might as well see what the CDC and the FDA, what they're talking about. So I looked up the CDC, and like on the flu shot said, the chances of a serious adverse side effect is greater than 1 in a million. And I had that little carrot turned on its side, so I knew it. I know what that means. And then it says, rarely some people may have 2 or 3 days of minor discomfort. And I thought that was strange because all these people that we run into, she ran into 28 people. They had, I want to say 38 people had to go to the hospital. 28 people had Guillain-Barré syndrome, half of them for a full year. One had narcolepsy and a bunch of other things. Now, how are we finding these people? We're finding only a small sample. This one guy, he's diagnosed with Guillain-Barré for a whole year at Mayo Clinic down in Arizona. Okay, so he had Guillain-Barré, and all the rest of them are lying. But this was Mayo Clinic. Presumably they know what they're doing, I hope. But anyway, how come she can find these people and government cannot? She's only taken, say, 24,000 people, and they're talking about 1 in a million. So her sample's too small, so how come she's finding these people? So anyway, I see the North Coast Journal has their little cartoon in there about taking your vaccine and all that kind of stuff. And here we have all this nonsense put out by government. It gives you the impression that you shouldn't trust government because they don't know what they're doing. Thank you.
All right, Charles. And before we go on to, you can come on up, Genevieve. I just want to let somebody, there was a public member that raised their hand after we went back. And just so this person knows, once we've moved on to commenters that are actually here in person, we don't go back on the phone. So I apologize. It could have been the time delay. But in the future, I suggest when you're calling in to talk about general public comment, press *9 as soon as you call in, if you know that's what you're speaking about. So, all right, yes, Genevieve.
Yes, this is Genevieve Wilson. Like I say, I like to talk to people because I'm a nurse. I give the shot. So I just find it from the nurse's mouth. Oh, no, not nurse's mouth, the horse's mouth. So like this weekend, we go to Kotati to dance, and I do talk to one person. She say, she talked to somebody from India. In India, the government say the big pharma had to take care of the vaccine injury. Say, no, you make the money, you take care of the vaccine injury. Their government are thinking about their citizens. But our country here, government exempt the responsibility, no liability for the big pharma. So what does that mean? I mean, this is wrong. Like last time I talked about your food poison, you got compensation. Car injury, you get a compensation, but this is a big deal, big things. But we let it go. We don't stand up for it. That is very sad. And I talked to somebody. She said in the school they have 2 young kids, 17 years old, die in their sleep. A year ago, I talked to somebody in Fortuna. He also said a 16-year-old girl took the shot and died in their sleep. The people have a beautiful life, and they don't have it anymore. And also just like sudden death infant syndrome, the same thing, too many vaccine. Because my children grow up around 70, only had 11. Right now we have 72. And then we're keeping pushing. And now they don't want to push the COVID for the kids. That's so sad. Oh, we need to stand up for this. Left and right, so many people die. We know it. And I go out and talk to people. A year ago, I cannot go to grocery outlet because they don't want me to talk about vaccine. So the other day, I went there to buy my 2 watermelon. Law forbidden. The woman who yelled at me right behind me coming to work, she said, "Stop harassing people. And you're the private property. You cannot get your watermelon." I said, "How are you done with?" By the way, I never see the owner, but I'm being banned from the store. So I said, "I want to see the owner." They say she's not there. But the timing just so perfect. I check out my watermelon, and then she's right there. So what my point is, seriously, we need to think about monkeypox or whatever. You got to take care of your body. Plenty of sleep, take your vitamin D, wash your hands, take care of yourself. Because the next thing, like I say, maybe elephantitis. Fear is a real virus, you know? But if you fear, your immune system go down, you walk around so carefully. But anyway, one song is that those are the days my friend, we sing and dance forever and ever. And we do the life, we live the life we choose. We fight and never lose. So we need to live the life we choose. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Genevieve. And welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Chair Virginia Bass, supervisors, and support representation for Humboldt County. I first and foremost want to agree with the Honorable and Respectable Ruby Banyan, MD. Dr. Banyan serves at our waterfront with Section 8 housing and has mentioned the keen interest of a crisis intervention center, or may I include more than one, and working with hospital coalition teams to bring together uses of materials, refined and time-tested shapes like pallet houses, yurts, and manufactured homes, using Humboldt County and California creativity for custom-designed and placed temperature-controlled spaces. I'm also interested in the plans and procedures for changing any and all places of boarded up windows to fully functioning businesses, plus sponsored places of rest and wellness, and more wall spaces and showcases of Humboldt County artists' work and or displays of collections from all ages living, plus honoring those who have passed. Recent research of mine includes tiny homes postings on the World Wide Web with titles like The Best Black Tiny House with Drawing Plans and The Hut from Ohio, along with a development in Patagonia with Airbnb shelters made from a nice mix of materials and spectacular views from cozy settings. I'd also like to address our visitor center needs with a suggestion of consistent Humboldt County signage for those now in place, working with the federal courthouse in northern McKinleyville and their hours to help guests and our own learn about and enjoy our unique history. Yesterday, I asked the people at A&L Feed to collaborate with the people at Muddy Paws and hope for the former gas station and Java Hut to be transformed to a more welcoming use. So I'm adding a strong Humboldt County effort for more available and affordable housing from temporary, practical, place-appropriate use of tents, teepees, straw bales, and recycled materials. Thank you for your assistance and your listening ear and all-out effort we can. Have a great day and the best day of your life today.
Steve. All right, thank you very much. All right, I see no one else here, so we'll go to the board, back to the board, and go on to our next item, which is, I believe, the department reports and the grand jury item. So we're going to go fiscal year 21-22 grand jury responses, and I'll turn this over to our CAO to turn it over to.
Thank you, Chair Bass. Kati Gallardo is here today, Public Information Officer for our office, and I do believe Sean Quincy is probably on Zoom to provide the presentation today on the grand jury reports.
All right, welcome. Thanks. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Virginia. Good afternoon, Chair Bass and members of the board. As Alicia just mentioned, my name is Katy Gallardo, and I'm the Public Information Specialist for the County Administrative Office. Before discussing the findings and recommendations of 2 reports today, I would like to express our sincerest gratitude to the members of the grand jury for the hard work that went into these detailed reports. The first report includes a draft response from your board to the 2021-22 grand jury report titled "The Sea Also Rises." This report discusses the county's planning efforts regarding sea level rise and discusses recommendations on how to improve them. Humboldt County is far ahead of most California coastal areas in identifying and planning sea level rise mitigation actions. The report raises concerns around the impacts of sea level rise throughout Humboldt Bay, specifically in communities including King Salmon, Fields Landing, Fairhaven, Finntown, who are presently being impacted by sea level rise. The report discusses the potential formation of a regional sea level rise planning group, in addition to obstacles that could get in the way of implementing sea level rise adaptation efforts, including funding, as well as the permitting process. The grand jury requested responses from your board, the Arcata City Council, the Eureka City Council, and the Board of Commissioners of the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District. I will briefly summarize the draft responses from your board, and you may receive the proposed responses and approve them or modify them as you see appropriate. Regarding your board, this report found that studies conducted over the past decade have clearly defined the locations and infrastructures that are vulnerable to sea level rise around Humboldt Bay. It indicates that there is an urgency to start developing and implementing solutions. The recommended response agrees with this and acknowledges that the county has conducted surveys and interviews with key stakeholders on the creation of the Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Regional Planning Feasibility Study Stakeholder Catalog. Results of these surveys identified varying responses between stakeholders and even individuals within organizations on what levels of sea level rise we should be addressing. And this is pertaining to how many feet of sea level rise we should be targeting and in what time frame it should be addressed. And staff recommends that a good starting point for developing and implementing solutions would be to obtain consensus on the height and time frame of the county's regional adaptation efforts. The grand jury found that with the formation of a regional sea level rise planning group, ongoing costs and salaries, benefits, and overhead would require political entities surrounding Humboldt Bay to agree to cost sharing. The draft response agrees that significant external funding would be needed and recognizes that collaboration is essential to effective planning and implementation of sea level rise adaptation measures. However, it is premature for the county to commit to cost sharing and/or the allocation of staff time for a regional planning group without first making decisions about whether a regional planning group is the appropriate near-term focus to address sea level rise. The grand jury also recommends that your board, the Arcata and Eureka City Council, and the Harbor District Board of Commissioners meet by September 30th to vote to affirm a commitment to mitigating the adverse effects of sea level rise and direct staff to make this commitment as a priority in their planning efforts. The county has already committed to addressing sea level rise, and this recommendation is currently in the process of being implemented. The county's draft Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Regional Planning Feasibility Study will explore potential frameworks for regionally managing sea level rise. The draft study identifies 2 broad framework categories, one being policy-based and the other is organization-based. The grand jury recommends that your board, along with elected officials from Arcata, Eureka, and the Harbor District, form a Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Steering Committee by December 1st. Staff believes this recommendation requires further analysis and acknowledges that the recommendation of forming a steering committee may have merit, although its composition and what decision-making authority it would have needs further research and deliberation. The grand jury recommends that the Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Steering Committee direct the implementation of a regional sea level rise coordination entity based on conclusions and recommendations in the Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Regional Planning Feasibility Study. And staff recommends further analysis is needed and agrees to research this recommendation on the direction of your board. Among other recommendations, your board is encouraged to analyze the low-lying communities of King Salmon, Fields Landing, and Fairhaven Finntown to develop a planned retreat process. The county has already developed a specific vulnerability assessments for these communities, so this part of the recommendation will not be implemented without further clarification about what is missing from the current assessments. Planning a retreat process for these communities may be an important component of the future regional approach to sea level rise adaptation, which will involve the county, residents, and utility providers, and that requires additional research. It is also recommended that the county solicit definitive input from regulatory agencies with jurisdiction over threatened areas so that the implementation of mitigation or adaptation actions are not delayed by the permitting process. The Board of Supervisors cannot implement a recommendation that eliminates permitting processes, such as there is no delay in implementation of mitigation actions. The reason for permitting primarily is to protect public health, safety, and welfare. However, staff does recognize that unnecessary delays in permitting have harmful effects as well. The county's policy background study analyzes policies that support preparation of streamlined permitting based on compliance with specified performance standards. And Planning and Building Director John Ford is here and prepared to discuss this report and staff's recommendations or recommended responses in further detail with you if you have additional questions. And if you do not, I will move on to the next report.
All right, are there any additional questions at this time? No?
All right.
Is Sean's doing a lot of work on there. No. Sean, if you do want to say anything, just let me know. Raise your hand.
All right, so we are going to move on to the next grand jury report titled Distrust, Disagreements, and Dysfunction. This report details the grand jury's investigation into Humboldt County's financial management and practices, which identified deficiencies regarding the performance of the county's former auditor-controller, including the failure to meet legally required deadlines for filing financial reports. The report also acknowledged that some improvements were made to update the county's accounting practices by the former auditor-controller, and noted that this progress was hampered due to poor interdepartmental communication. Lack of effective communication was a common theme found throughout this report. The grand jury requested responses from the former auditor-controller, the interim treasurer tax collector, the sheriff, the director of public works, and director of health and human services, the county administrative officer, and your board. I will briefly summarize the proposed responses received from the Director of Public Works, the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the County Administrative Officer today. The Sheriff will file his responses separately, and due to varying required timelines, the draft responses for your board will come back for approval in September. A response from the Interim Treasurer Tax Collector has been included as a courtesy. Regarding the Treasurer Tax Collector, I'll briefly note a few responses from that office. The grand jury recommends that the auditor and treasurer's offices begin reconciling cash and investment accounts no later than the last day of each month, which the treasurer is in process of implementing. The treasurer is currently working to bring bank reconciliations for fiscal year 1920 up to date in partnership with the interim auditor controller. In addition, quickly touching on the CAO's requested response to this, the treasurer and CAO have been working together since April 2022 to reconcile cash and investment accounts for fiscal year 1920 and subsequent years. And the chief financial officer has continued this work since July 1st, 2022 in the auditor's office. It is recommended that the auditor reinstate issuing certificates of the auditor or reach an agreement with the treasurer tax collector for an alternative control procedure that is directed by government code. And this will be implemented as the interim treasurer notes that the check and balance system between the treasurer and auditor are critical to county operations. Regarding the departmental responses, Public Works and DHHS partially agree that the former auditor and county departments have different interpretations of fiscal policies and that they use different operational reporting systems, resulting in inefficiencies and delayed budget and audit reporting. Public Works uses an additional operation reporting structure to manage the road fund, which is required by the state controller for the annual roads report. This system does not cause delay to budget and audit reporting, as the system is independent from the county finance system, but is balanced to the finance system on a monthly and yearly basis by Public Works staff. DHHS is primarily funded by the federal and state government and must adhere to claiming and reporting requirements, timelines, templates, and technological systems that go beyond the county's financial reporting requirements and timelines. While adhering to these state and federal financial requirements, DHHS has complied with the county's operational structures and timelines and submitted all documentation requested in a timely manner and did not delay the budget or audit reporting processes. DHHS also notes that there were instances where the former auditor, without consultation of DHHS, interpreted DHHS contracts or components in ways that DHHS nor the contractor intended. Public Works agrees with the grand jury's finding that the former auditor did not file financial reports and audits on time as required by state and federal governments in 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, causing the loss of substantial public funds to the county, schools, and special districts, which put past, current, and future funds at risk. Public Works has been unable to file an indirect cost rate with the Department of Transportation since fiscal year 18-19, as the financial statements for the subsequent years have not been filed with the state of California. And the Department of Transportation has disallowed funding for all future projects until the annual financial reports are completed. The CAO also agrees with this finding and notes that the interim auditor controller has developed a corrective action plan to have the outstanding audits on financial transaction reports through fiscal year 21-22 finalized by the end of this fiscal year. This plan has been reviewed by the state, and the CAO is dedicated to supporting this goal. Public Works also agrees that the county departmental financial managers have reported that changes made by the former auditor to financial procedures without timely notification or consultation were disruptive to their departments, and noted that those changes have created additional work for their departments. Some of these changes have impacted departments' board-approved budgets. Line items that were approved by your board were deactivated mid-year in the county's financial system without prior notification. This required departments to process additional appropriation transfers to open allowable lines, causing delays in vendor payments being processed and increased the number of journals that had to be created and posted in the county's finance system. DHHS partially agrees that the auditor controller made changes to the chart of accounts and object lines, resulting in the deletion of data, leading to the inability for county programs to make claims for reimbursements. DHHS is not aware of any changes that resulted in the deletion of data. However, when the former auditor made changes to the chart of accounts and object lines, the department suffered the loss of data integrity and tracking from your board's approved budget. These impromptu changes made it difficult to track where all the department's charges for a specific program were posting to over the course of a fiscal year. Public Works acknowledges that written processes and procedures will mitigate miscommunications and potential delays, and Public Works will implement the recommendation that the Auditor's Office, in cooperation with departments, develop an agreed-upon written process for recommending, implementing, and giving notice of changes to financial procedures. The CAO also agrees with this finding and will implement the recommendation. The CAO notes that the county contracted with the Accounting and Financial Services Consulted, MGO, to develop and update the county's fiscal policies manual. The draft manual was completed by MGO in the fall of 2021, and the county council and the CAO have reviewed the manual and provided feedback. The former auditor did not provide feedback regarding the manual. The interim auditor controller will have the opportunity to review it and provide feedback, and a presentation for possible adoption of the financial policies manual is anticipated this October. Regarding other responses requested by the County Administrative Office, the grand jury recommends that the auditor follow established procedures by submitting an annual budget proposal to the County Administrative Office for fiscal year 22-23, and for each subsequent fiscal year, and this recommendation is in the process of being implemented. The former auditor did not participate in the county's annual budget processes for fiscal year 2021, 21-22, or 22-23, and did not submit requests for additional resources or staff at those times. The budget process at this time, when the county can weigh requests as they relate to the board's stated priorities and identify additional funding, space, and other needs. For the fiscal year 22-23 recommended budget, the CAO staff included a placeholder budget for the auditor's office and increased the contingency funds budget by more than $900,000 to $2.5 million, with the understanding that additional resources would likely be needed. There was also a recommendation to establish an advisory committee, and due to previous communication challenge, your board established an audit committee, which, if utilized by the auditor controller, may fulfill many of the objectives of this recommendation. The grand jury also recommends that the CAO and the auditor establish effective communications, which has been implemented. The CAO and auditor have bi-weekly standing meetings and have been in regular communication. In addition, the assistant CAO, Chief Financial Officer, is currently serving as interim assistant auditor controller. And this sharing of resources has helped bridge the gap between both offices. The CAO supports the recommendation that if the auditor anticipates a required report or audit cannot be filed on time, your board to be notified and assistance be requested from the other agencies. However, this recommendation is for the auditor to notify the board and request assistance from the CAO and other agencies, so the CAO cannot implement this recommendation. The grand jury also recommends that the CAO comply with county code requirement of supervising all county departments by requiring all departments to submit financial documents to the auditor within a time frame and manner necessary to meet established reporting and filing deadlines. This recommendation will be implemented. However, as an elected official, the auditor creates their own guidelines and deadlines. While the CAO and county will strive to meet those requirements, it is up to the auditor to clearly communicate the information, records, and deadlines that they require. Without that, the CAO cannot work with departments on meeting these requirements. As mentioned previously, you may receive the proposed departmental responses and approve them or modify them as you deem appropriate. CAO Hayes and Directors Madsen, I believe, is on Zoom, and Directors Beck are here to answer questions, as is our CFO and interim assistant auditor controller. And this concludes my staff report, and I would like to thank the grand jury for their work on these reports, and thank you all for your time.
All right, any questions of any of the people mentioned? No? All right, if you are listening and you wish to comment on this item, you should press *9 now and turn the volume off your video so there's not a time delay. So we'll go to those. Is there anyone with their hand up online? I can't see. It's not showing up on the iLegislate, but it's
Public.
all right. So I see 0116. I'm not seeing it on this one, but I see it on this screen. So 0116. Hello? Comments. Yes, Ash, welcome.
Hello, yeah, I just wanted to talk about the first item before the grand jury, the ocean level rise that someone was talking about. I just recommend before the county would dedicate too much money to, preparing for that. From what I've read, I believe like the ocean has gradually been rising about like maybe 2 to 3 millimeters a year. So you look, a couple hundred years into the future, it might be a matter of inches. Like also you just look at, like Barack Obama just bought like a $12 million oceanfront property on Martha's Vineyard. Leonardo DiCaprio, he made a movie about the perils of climate change and ocean levels rising. In 2019, he also bought himself an oceanfront property. And then if you look around just the real estate market, if this was a real emergency, you'd kind of expect a bunch of, everybody selling, all this oceanfront property showing up at ridiculously cheap prices, but that just is not the case. And I personally have a family member who has oceanfront property, and as far as I know, he has no intention of selling it anytime soon here for any kind of discount or at all, really. But that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. So, all right, so we'll move on to the other hand that's up. And if you're planning to talk, please press star 9 now. 7454. It's just press star 6.
Can you hear me?
Kind of. You're kind of muffled, actually.
Kind of. Okay, I'll try moving around a bit. Anyway, I have a different definition of sea level rise than some people do. I call it a tsunami. That's what should be being planned for, in my opinion. The chances of negative impacts of being by what is commonly referred to as sea level rise is non-existent compared to the tsunami, which eventually will happen. I did wish to make comment on the one on the Auditor Controller's office. It's amazing how all of a sudden, $900,000 is budgeted now that it's under the control of the CAO's office. Everything seems to be going well as far as staffing's in the works. Is Cheryl in the house today? I was just curious. She is the interim Auditor Controller until she actually steps. I would hope she's in the house to answer your questions. That would be appropriate that she attend these kind of meetings. I did notice, and I'm glad to see that, I think you used a different term, but the Workforce User Financial Procedures Manual, I think you used a different word, has been updated because it hadn't been updated since 1980s. And a lot of things regarding the county system hadn't been updated since the 1980s. And that's, of course, a lot of the dysfunction that we had within the county was that this was trying to be adapted and brought up to speed. So I did wish to point that out. A lot of the things that we have here, comments were made such as the Auditor Controller didn't ask for staff during budgeting or something. I remember just maybe not during budgeting, but I recall Joe Mellett and Karen Paz both being very adamant that they were understaffed and asking for stuff. So I don't know if you have to do it specifically during budgeting, but if you do it 5 times during the year, does that count? I just, it's kind of interesting how this all seems to be working through. We spend $971,000 on consultants. I hope that does pay off. Hopefully with your new thing, we won't have as much dysfunction. I know it's not going to be intentional dysfunction caused by certain people sitting at the dais and certain people in positions of power. And that's public perception out there, and that won't go away. So good luck with what you're doing there regarding the Auditor Controller's office. And I think we have another election in 4 years. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. There's no other hands, correct? All right. So we will go to those who are here in person. This is the time to comment on the items from this report, sea level rise and fiscal issues, I guess. So, all right. There's no one interested in commenting on that one, so we'll go back to the board. And Supervisor Wilson?
I'll move that we file and receive the 2 reports that we received from today.
Second.
Oh, yeah. All right. There's a motion and a second. And we'll get the vote tab if mine works. There it is.
Thank you to staff for the report as well.
Yeah, and thank you to the grand jury for all their work and staff for the complete responses for both the sea level rise and the Auditor Controller elements of this. Satisfactory as usual. Thank you.
All right. Passes 4-0. I almost said 5-0, but 4-0. So at this point, I believe we're going back into closed session. Anything else that I'm missing on the agenda? CAO?
No, I would say we might be back in an hour or so to report out on closed session.
We will do our best. If you really want one. Are you ready? All right. May we have a report out of closed session?
Yes, Chair Bass. There was no reportable action taken with regard to items K2 through K5. With regard to item K6, the board voted 4-0 with Supervisor Madrone absent to authorize outside counsel for the county to sign a stipulation to amend settlement agreement and judgment of dismissal and for entry thereof, which extends the term of the settlement agreement and judgment relating to the case of Friends of the Eel River versus County of Humboldt et al., case number CV 180495, from December 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2027, to allow for continued court jurisdiction during the period of the grant funding program required thereby, contains dates for the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors to take action on grants issued thereunder, and augments certain notice provisions set forth therein to include Friends of the Eel River. With regard to item K7, the board voted unanimously to authorize the Office of County Counsel to represent the Humboldt County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters in the case of Tiffany Hunt Nielsen versus Kelly E. Sanders, Humboldt County Superior Court case number CV 2201226.
All right, that covers them all, right?
It does.
All with that, then we are adjourned.